USAID, through the East Africa Trade and Investment Hub, is working closely with the cotton, apparel, and textile industry in East Africa to address the binding constraints limiting growth, identified as trade policy issues, workforce development, and social welfare and safety standards. The Hub will address these constraints through its Cotton, Textile, and Apparel Industry Expansion Initiative, which aims to create 45,000 jobs in the region in the next 3 years. The initiative will start in Kenya.
Kenya has actually been one of the most forward-leaning East African countries. When we were introducing AGOA, it was first in and adopting the policies required under AGOA. We've already seen $400 million in exports from Kenya since 2015 when the AGOA expansion came through. In addition, we are seeing one of the most creative and active workforces being developed and created here, and it happens to be the center of USAID's Trade and Investment Hub. So we see a lot of opportunity in Kenya, both with the workforce and with the willingness of the government, and I think a lot of creativity with the partners and the companies that are engaged here.
The 10-year AGOA renewal has seen a massive surge in exports and investment here, and the government has also stepped up its support to manufacturers and investment in infrastructure.
The thing that we focused on in the last 3 years as government is actually to try and address the issue around cost of doing business in Kenya. And it's for that reason that we have transformed the port of Mombasa. That port is today 3 times in terms of capacity more than it was about 3-4 years ago. Number 2, we have made significant investments in linking East Africa through the standard gauge railway line. And infrastructure in roads, in airports. These are all things geared towards making the cost of doing business much, much more affordable and easier than it has been before.
Following AGOA passage in 2000, Global Apparel was the first company to set up in an export processing zone just outside Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Managing Director Narain Shadpuri is proud of being the elder on the AGOA block.
Government is also trying to induce companies that can probably put textile industries here. And once that happens, and Kenya in particular will be one of the leading exporters from Africa. Kenya, as it is today, is the biggest exporter. That biggest is very small though, but that can expand. So come to Kenya, you'll be looked after well, and the quality garments can be produced here.
In 15 years of operation, the industry has undergone unprecedented shifts in their capacity to respond to consumers' concerns for the social welfare and safety of those individuals making their clothes while maintaining quality product. Pankaj Bedi heads United Aryan Limited, a company that employs 10,000 people in a neighborhood that has been transformed because of job creation.
This industry can really create good jobs, and at the same time we can have exports and create forex also. So it has dual benefit for the government. They can see that how many jobs we can create if we compare with, let's say, Bangladesh. Bangladesh has 5 million direct jobs. So if we get even 10% of that, it's big for us. So now the government has also initiated training of workers, developing skills. We as a company also do that. So I think the whole idea is evolving. Government is getting connected. They have given a lot of other supports also. They are planning to give energy support. So at least they are listening. They are modifying their policies as per the requirement of the particular industry.
Today we do about $415 million worth of exports. We would like in the next 3 years to be able to exceed the $1 billion mark. And so we've got a short window at the beginning of the 10-year period to actually bring more investors. And we are doing this not on our own, but really with a lot of support from different players, including the Hub, which has been extremely helpful. So I think we listen, we do what we need to do to make it possible. And along the way, hopefully not in too distant future, we should be able to see a win-win situation for the government in attracting investors and for investors making one of the best investment decisions in getting appropriate returns out of Kenya.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our keynote speaker, Juan Estrada. And probably I'll begin with you, Juan, so you can sit. Your profile had already been mentioned. I will not return to your profile. But I want to line up our moderator for this evening. He's known to many of us here in this country. He's an expert on matters economics, but I guess the profile should... Sorry, really sorry. Let's introduce our moderator for this evening.
Muhumuza is a development economist with a PhD from the University of Manchester. He has been involved in development policy research, analysis, formulation and review for over 20 years, with a parallel teaching career at Makerere University, Nkumba University and African Bible University. He has undertaken assignments in public sector policy, both as a researcher and practitioner, carrying out analysis of socio-economic development policies, and participated in capacity building programs for Parliament, civil society and the private sector. From 2006 to 2014, he worked as economic advisor to the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development in Uganda. His schedule involved managing trade-offs between politics and evidence-based policy making. Prior to that, Muhumuza had worked as a research fellow at the Economic Policy Research Center. He has also worked as senior manager at KPMG Uganda and Financial Sector Deepening Uganda. Muhumuza is a board chair of World Vision Uganda, a board member for Bank of India Uganda, member of council at Uganda Christian University, and member of council for Scripture Union Uganda.
Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Muhumuza. Well, as Fred makes his way, I want to introduce a panelist. And Fred, I guess you will be closer here. So when I have some notes to pass on, especially around time issues, you're much closer. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Geoffrey Onegi Obel.
Onegi Obel, sometimes called the godfather of the Uganda security industry, Geoffrey is an experienced investment banker with clear skill sets in product development in the areas of bonds, equities, and related instruments. Together with Governor Emeritus Leo Chibirango, he founded the Uganda Securities Exchange Limited with the support of USAID and the Bank of Uganda, and served for 10 years as chairman, during which he pioneered the regional cross listings as a stopgap solution to a slowdown in listings. Currently, Geoffrey and his team partners are working on East Africa's first regional cross-border exchange, set to trade exclusively in cross-border securities. This is also a response to a prolonged product drought on the East African exchanges, even more pronounced in Uganda. The East African Mortgage Market Initiative, a regional mortgage market initiative, is also part of the GCIFP team product pipeline.
Ladies and gentlemen, Geoffrey Onegi Obel. And as Geoffrey makes his way, allow me also now introduce a gentleman from the Bank of Uganda. He's Executive Director of Research, Adam Mugume.
Dr. Adam Mugume holds a PhD degree in economics from Oxford University, UK. He is currently working with Bank of Uganda as Executive Director for Research and Policy. He joined Bank of Uganda in 2007 as the Head of Modeling and Forecasting Division in the Economic Research Department. He previously worked with Makerere University as a Senior Lecturer and Head of Department of Economic Theory and Analysis. He has been a visiting lecturer in monetary theory and practice and econometrics at the African Economic Research Consortium AERC Collaborative Masters Joint Facility for Electives Program and Monetary Economics for AERC Collaborative PhD Program. He is a faculty member at the Trade Policy Training Center in Africa, TRAPCA, under the Eastern and Southern Africa Management Institute, ESAMI, Arusha, Tanzania. He also worked with World Bank between 2004 and 2007 as a consultant economist on labor market and structure change in Uganda, labor and growth in the Ugandan informal sector, fiscal deficits and debt sustainability, aid management in Uganda, and other micro issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Adam Mugume. I must say, with the doctor's profile, we made sure we edited. I think we cut it to a third of what it was. Doctor, we apologize. I also want to mention, and I want to apologize on behalf of Barbara Murana, who had an engagement on short notice. She's chairperson Uganda Manufacturers Association. And we have the team from Uganda Manufacturers Association, so let's not say there is any politics being played here. And I guess the ladies would have been asking, why is there no lady on this panel? So I really must apologize on behalf of the team. But the content team was quick to ask the Managing Director, Ubeme, to step in. So, ladies and gentlemen, the profile of Celestino Babunji.
Babunji is an accountant and corporate executive in Uganda. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Meme, whose shares are traded on both the Uganda Securities Exchange and the Nairobi Stock Exchange, and is the largest independent power distribution company in Uganda. He was appointed in March 2015, and he assumed his current position on 1st April 2015, replacing Charles Chapman, whose term had ended. He studied at Makerere University, graduating with a degree of Bachelor's of Statistics. He is a fellow of the Association of the Chartered Accountants of the United Kingdom. He is also a certified public accountant of the Certified Public Accountants of Uganda. From 1999 until 2006, he worked with Ernst & Young at its Kampala office. Joined Meme in 2006 and served as Regional Operations Manager and then as Credit Control Manager. In 2012, he was appointed Chief Finance Officer, serving in that role until he was appointed Chief Executive Officer effective 1st April 2015.
All right, Celestino Babunji. So, ladies and gentlemen, your panel for this evening, I hand it over to you, Fred Mumze.
Thank you, Maurice. Good evening, everybody. Well, there we are. We are here to look forward to positive solutions. We know where we are, and we possibly know where we want to be. I want to believe the challenge is how do we get there? We're doing quite a number of things, and we'll be looking at them. And I want to show a few slides, just maybe 2 or 3, of where we are in some of the areas that the keynote speaker addressed about exports. I quickly this morning tried to get into the Bank of Uganda website while Adam Mugume was working on his desk. I hacked into the Bank of Uganda website and was able to see where our exports, where our imports, what exactly is happening in that space, so that if we are to really say, where do we begin? And in this discussion, we want to have what could be the takeaways, the things we can do within 2-3 years, and the things we can do within the 5 to 10 years. Because those things you must do quite quickly. If you can find those slides, please, I'll be happy to move on. But it clearly shows us where our exports are going. And I was amazed to see that for all the exports that we are looking at and for all the countries that we look at, it's surprising to see who the countries that are really driving our export agenda. Kenya, our neighbor here. What I did was to look at the numbers and add up the last 6 years of exports, and then select whoever hit above 100 or 200. And 5-6 countries amazingly give us some very good numbers. Kenya, South Sudan, United Arab Emirates, Rwanda. We exported to them over $1 billion in the last 6 years. And if you're thinking of where do I send my exports immediately, I want to open up those countries to say, what is it that they are buying from here? How can I sustain that? Some quick things that we can look at. We don't want to lament on what has been happening to our economy. We all agree the economy is not growing as fast as it should. We have all agreed that our population is growing faster. The global economy hasn't been very friendly to us. So we are here to look for solutions. And my role as moderator I want you to discuss the economy. I will just make sure the economics is tagged along. So feel free to do your discussion of the economy. I will just be making sure the economics is tagged along. Some things will challenge them to see whether they are still relevant economics. I have seen a few ideas coming from the economics that worked in the 70s, possibly in the 80s. But the world has changed. Where should we be going? There you are with some of those numbers. To see the big ones down there, you are trying to see where are we exporting and where are we importing. The importers, led by India, China, Kenya, United Arab Emirates, each of these, and you can go down and you see up to all the way Indonesia, in the last 6 years, we imported from there over $1 billion worth of goods. But if you look at the exports, as I've said, if I was to say, who do I want to visit tomorrow? Who do I want to have a cup of tea with as a Ugandan? You can see Kenya is way ahead of everybody. Over $2 billion worth of exports to Kenya in the last 6 years. You have United Arab Emirates, and this, by the way, is a very fast runner. At the beginning of this, we're exporting to them about $187 million worth per year. Last year, 2016-17, we did 487. So we have kind of multiplied that by 4 compared to what we exported to the European Union, 505. So United Arab Emirates alone is about to take over the entire European Union. These are the dynamics that are changing, and I think they should be forming our discussion as we go forward. Where are the opportunities emerging from? Numbers quite often don't lie us. Now, the last slide I wanted to say, what is it that we are importing? Is there anything there that we can substitute? Machinery, vehicles, I'm not very sure. Petroleum products, maybe soon. Chemicals and related materials. From vegetables upwards, we surely can do something about those. Can't we? And you can see these are billions of imports. I believe we can change some of those. So our discussion should be really looking at where is the economy and why is the economy the way it is. And I have an able panel here that is going to give us those remarks. We have quite many challenges. Uganda is one area where the economy seems not to speak to the economics. This is one area where Adam Mugume has struggled very hard to reduce interest rates together with his team monetary policy. But surprisingly, credit is also going down. This is not known in economics, that interest rates go down and credit also goes down, or at least stalls. So what are the problems? What are the key issues we want to be addressing? And I want to be casting some of these questions to Adam Mugume. What does he see in the research department? Where do we see going next? And I will also be asking him to speak for IFRS 9. I know some people know IFRS 9 is coming on board. This is going to be a very tight regulation. Maybe we'll see even credit get tighter. But we need credit flowing out there, because when reading through World Bank communication, it was clear private sector demand, increase of private sector credit are going to be part of the drivers for our next growth if we are to get 5 and later on 6.5. Adam Mugume, you'll have some 5 minutes to begin with. Say what you want to say. This first round is your blank check. I was just trying to poke into your blank check to put those things they say only, so that you don't give yourself $1 billion shillings. I've already put only somewhere at the end, so you can only fit in a few figures. Adam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Moderator. Good evening, everybody. I think there is no doubt that Uganda, mainly in 2016, had serious challenge in terms of economic growth. But to be on the positive side, I think we are seeing some light in the way. Now, in all the discussions, in the policy making, all these things are known to everybody at least. If you are in Uganda in 1990s and 2000s, we had, for example, the plan for modernization of agriculture, which had the agricultural production, marketing, financing, that obviously fell through the cracks. But I think there are some of the ideas that we already see in that plan for modernization of agriculture, which actually our keynote speaker also pointed out. Remember AGOA Girls and AGOA Factory, went through that. We also somehow fell through the cracks. But on the positive side, I think we are trying to revive most of the things, and I think we, in some of the challenges, are already well known, and some of these are really being addressed. This morning, we had a lengthy discussion with also investors about some of the challenges and also activities that are being undertaken really to address some of the issues. One of them is the energy. The question is now we have oversupply of energy in some circles, but we also know that the challenge we have has been distribution, which is also being handled. Agricultural production, one of the challenges, as also we have talked about, is basically because of the rain-fed agriculture. Seeing through, we are seeing irrigation activities being planned, and also fertilizers, improvement of seeds, that those are also being handled. So there are some positive development we are seeing in the horizon. That's why in our focus, we are saying at least for 2018-19, we are likely to see economic growth at 5%. We know that our target is in the range of 7+, but at least from where we are in the last year of 4%, we are saying that actually with all this development, with improvement in execution of public investment, we are likely to see a bit of improvement in terms of economic growth. Are these sufficient? The answer is no. Now, really, that is where we come to the point. What can be done to move forward? We all know, number one, agricultural production. Improvement in agricultural production. Every Ugandan knows that actually we need agricultural production to improve. Seed distribution mechanism, fertilizer usage, irrigation mechanism, but not only production, marketing, embedded. I always tease my friend that in my where I come from, I have a good tarmac road, but we are using goats and cows to move along the road because there is nothing to move on the road. The Minister of Finance is here. So for the first time, we have a very good tarmac road, but we are using it to, in the evening you find goats and cows grazing around the road, simply because the use of the road was not part of the integrated framework when we are talking about the infrastructure. So an integrated approach where we're saying, okay, this is the road, what can I use the road to do in terms of agricultural production, marketing, distribution, I think is one of the issues that really need to be handled. Dr. Muhuza raised the issue of the cost of credit. And this has been one of the perennial issues. Everybody knows in Uganda we had a controlled interest rate, distribution of credit, that policy failed miserably. Everybody knows the cost of credit is high. But think about it. The savings rate in Uganda is 13% currently. Given the population dynamics, we are talking about savings ratio, in terms of income around 13%. At 13%, the question is, a bank is an intermediary, intermediates between a saver and a borrower. If the saving is at 13%, where can the bank get money to run out cheaply? It becomes really a big issue. So the whole question, therefore, of saying, the cost of credit is high, blah, blah. I know the Minister of Finance has tried to remedy some of those by recapitalizing your Uganda Development Bank. So those are some of the measures that we would see having an impact down the road. For example, once UDB is up and down running, recapitalized, can issue its own bonds, it can raise also its capital, then we are likely to see basically long-term finance coming through. I agree that one of the market failures we have had in the case of Uganda is basically lack of development finance. There's no doubt about that has been one of the big challenges, because by default, commercial banks have only demand deposits. Most of the deposits are demand. They can't lend them long term. The only alternative is really to have a well-functioning development finance. I'm glad that Obey is here in terms of securities and also capital market development. Those are some of the aspects we are seeing through that probably can drive growth going forward. For now, thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. He's raised quite a number of issues, and we'll be getting back to these issues even in our discussions, because these are key challenging issues of long-term finance that is so scarce in this country. And we have heard people say, well, the banks seem to be cheating us. The central bank rate has come down to 9. Why are they still charging us so high? I think he has shed some light there to say the banks don't use the CBR for lending. The CBR is a long-term signal of where monetary policy may be going. But what actually they lend is what they are picking from savings, and that's at 13%. So even CBR coming to 9, the thing you want to bring down is where are the banks picking the money from, and how can we get the capitalization of UDB going? Because that would now help us to send some of the people who need long-term finance not to go to the commercial banks who literally have demand deposits. These are some of the structural issues we see in the economy, and we want to have some good, candid discussion on how do we go forward. If I wanted to get a mortgage of 15 years in this country, is it available? Where do I find it? Do we have people getting skilled up to build houses using what they should be spending in the economy so that we can all see some money being spent around, but because people are trying to build houses? But I think one thing you touched, and I want to go to my friend Babunji, is the integrated approach on infrastructure. We seem to have gotten to a level where infrastructure was seen in isolation. We ramped it up, we put roads there, now only the cows are moving, not even on the road, but along the road. There's some good grass usually along the roads. But above the cows, possibly are power lines. And I can see Babungi also struggling to say, who do I sell this power to? Because he too accounts to some shareholders who gave him money and some investors. What do you see in the infrastructure sector? What do we need to be doing next, now that we seem to have some sufficient power on board or coming on board? Celestino.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I think the issue of power has been clearly highlighted by the keynote speaker. Electricity is the fuel. It energizes the country, it drives industrialization, drives improvements in household incomes and general service levels. It's also true that Uganda, at the time it took reforms of the electricity sector in the late 90s and early 2000s, the sector was really in bad shape. And over the period, we have improved our effective generation capacity from under 120 megawatts to currently 680 megawatts. It's also true that our maximum demand at the moment in the country is 570. Per capita consumption, 85 kilowatt hours per annum. If you want to be middle income, you need to multiply that by 6. But also, fundamentally, the government has done the right thing in terms of scaling up investments in power projects. We know that in the pipeline we have Karuma is coming, 600. We know Isimba is coming, 183, Ayago, Muzizi, and a number of other projects. But also combining that with investments in the transmission grid, and also the required investments in the distribution grid. Fundamentally, there are two key issues. If our maximum demand is 570 and you are getting 900, yes, the first thing you'll ask is the pipe sufficient to evacuate that power from the generation plant to the end user? The second question you ask yourself is there end user demand? Do we have those factories and industries ready to uptake this power? Always the theory is build the infrastructure. If the pricing is right, industry will set shop. Combined with other factors, by that including financing, availability of technical skills, and so on.
Right, Honorable Prime Minister, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Along with the Minister of Finance.
Yeah. So, thank you. So the key issue for me, I see for power sector, there are three things. We need access to improve from the current 22% to 40%, to 40+%. We need to ensure that this power is affordable. People can buy it. But also we have to drive this power for economic use. The key issue has been topical, which has been highlighted, was related to the cost of electricity. And we commend the government is doing the right thing. If you look at the current tariff, 75% of that cost is related to generation costs. And we are aware the government is implementing a number of initiatives. For instance, looking at the contract with Bujagali to ensure it's refinanced to reduce the generation cost for Bujagali. We know the new plants that are coming on from Karuma and Isimba are coming on at 5 cents. All those initiatives that will reduce the generation cost, which is 75% of the end user tariff, will drastically reduce the price of electricity. The second driver is efficiencies. The amount of losses along the way. We are glad that these losses have reduced from 38% as of around 2005. Now we are at 17%, and if you look in the region, Uganda may be one of the best. Actually, Kenya is at 21% in terms of reducing losses. The third element is long-term contracts. The nature of infrastructure investments are long-term in nature. They use long-term capital. If you deploy that capital over, or want to recover that capital over a short time, it's going to increase the current cost of the current prices. So the government should look at really long-term contracts for power-related infrastructure contracts. Then lastly, it's about creating demand. When you talk to UMA, they tell you that most of the industries in Uganda are operating at 54% capacity. And when you look at the electricity that goes to the industrial sector, it is 70% of the 570 megawatts that are demanded. The question is, if these industries were operating at 80 or 100%, where would we be? When you talk to the industrialists, they say some of the limiting factors maybe is the market. The market may be able to not be able to absorb all their products at the time. So the issue of creating markets for these industries, the issue of creating an enabling environment, stable regulatory regime, well-priced capital, markets across the region, value addition will go a long way in creating demand for this electricity that is coming on board. And I totally agree that yes, things are being done to reduce the cost of capital, the cost of power. Things are being done to increase access. And as a country, we must run an integrated approach to generation, transmission, and distribution, on top of creating the end users that will use this power productively.
Thank you very much, Celestino. I want to pick up on the issue of, I think he has a kind of explained part of the problem of the tariff. For some time we seem to be locked in there because we had contracts which allowed people to recover their investment in a short time, and these should have been long-term investments. If you invest $200 million, you want to recover it in 10 years, the tariff has to be high. But if it's a long-term contract of, say, 30 years, it's spread over, and you can only recover so much, so the tariff gets lower. But some of these are now beyond our discussions because we already have that situation. So it looks like the only immediate way out is how can we increase demand. Because if you have more people consuming this power, then they share the tariff and you benefit from what we'll call economies of scale. So we are going to be getting into this discussion on where is demand going to come from this country. Because already he's saying the manufacturers themselves are operating below capacity. So it's not even a question of setting up a factory. Even those who have set them up are running them at half or even less than half. What is binding them is who buys my iron sheets, who buys my dresses, who buys my water, who buys whatever you're making. I'm not getting demand there. So it looks like it's time to step outside the factory and see where should the factory sell, because the power is there, but the market seems to have gone now. And we're going to have that discussion on where should the market be going. So I'm trying to point out areas that will be soliciting for your views. But talking about long-term signal, capital markets. Geoffrey, I want to believe you have an idea for us here, or you want to completely tell us that there are no ideas. But surely the issue of long-term, I've talked about housing, where people can have 30 years to build a house or 20 years to build a house using that long-term mortgage. He has already mentioned that in the energy sector, if we had such a long-term signal and we got some long-term investors, we possibly wouldn't be having the tariff that we're having. Geoffrey, your 5 minutes for the initial blank check of what you want to tell the audience here before I begin to specifically bind you to some questions. You have a blank check.
Thank you very much,
Fred. Let me start by saying that at the outset, we need to grow by at least and not below 8 percentage points of GDP year on year for the next 10 years. And let me say that we can actually do it on just human capital and the resources which we have. Now, the engine for doing that is the price signal. If the price signal is short, as it is now, and Dr. Mugume here will bear me out, costs will be high. We use the 180-day note, treasury note, for pricing. From our perspective of the securities industry, that is a pointed signal of risk. I'd asked Fred Muhomuza, the self-declared hacker of the Bank of Uganda site, to hack and project the last year's yield curve. If it can still be done, it is on the website. If it can still be done, you'll see what I'm talking about. The curve is, it is like this. There's a hump. And the reason why there's that hump is because the price signals are short. Now we can deal with that. And this is what we want to bring on the table as the securities industry. We want to engage post-summit with sector champions and sub-sector champions to get our price signals right so that we can deal with this challenge of moving in 10 years, if it is 2018, in 10 years, 2028, to middle income strategy, middle income status. There's a slide which I have. I don't know whether they can project it. It shows us where we are now and where we can go. It's a three-stage timeline. You know we like timelines in finance. All the instruments we have right now are associated directly with our highly successful stabilization programs. Now, we need to engage the next generation of instruments for pricing so that we move to that stage of growth with jobs. And then finally to that stage of economic expansion. But I want to repeat, it needs to be a year-on-year growth rate of not less than 8 percentage points for the next 10 years. That's 2 cycles of 5 years. It's not that slide, it is the other one. Yeah, that one. The Prime Minister is, I think, familiar with this slide. There was a time we discussed something with him. As you can see, Kenya is just slightly ahead of Uganda, but is still within the range of stabilization. Rwanda and Ethiopia are squarely in the middle. They are generating year-on-year growth rates of between 7 and 9 points. And there's no one in that timeline bracket of 10 to 12 points of GDP. There's nobody. But we're saying actually Uganda can do it. That's why it is important to engage. Among other things, on the price signal. Specifically, we need a 30-year note in this economy. And Dr. Mugume knows what the effect of that note can be. That note would put downward pressure on rates. Everything has to do with pricing. Now, we cannot, of course, exhaust this, that subject in this summit. So we're looking out for post-summit for an engagement on this. And Mr. Prime Minister, as the leader of government business, we shall be talking to you because you're the only one who can cause this engagement to happen within a period of time. Fortunately, we have been told by the organizers that government is ready with a listening ear to engage. So, my 5 minutes, I'm signaling, I'm flagging price. The interest rate is the key price in the economy. You cannot have a CBR rate of 9.5%, and then you have retail lending rates in the upper double digits. That spread is unnecessary. We need to remove the fat in retail prices, in the retail lending rates. We need to remove the fat from there. And we can do it. And Dr. Mugume also knows how to do it. We can do it over a period of 10 years. We don't want to cap rates. We can use other tools to go about it. Thank you.
That is positive that the people who know how to do it are ready with government. So, Honorable Minister and Right Honorable Prime Minister, you already have some of the people in the House. But while I was not hacking into the Bank of Uganda website, by the way, hacking, I'm just using that word, the website is available for whosoever has data. You can just get in there and get some good information. I also decided to go downtown and bring the views of the people. And I met a small business down on Nasa Road and said, how is business? And this person told me, well, business has really gone down. They're in the business of printing those things. They print receipts, headed papers. So I said, by how much? They said, well, I think I'm getting a quarter of what I was getting 5 years ago. So that's a true reality of what I found downtown, that they're getting a quarter of their business. But I also sat down with one of the CEOs. I said, while we are in the jam and some of us are complaining and quarreling, the jam is holding us backwards, what is on your mind on Monday morning when you're driving to your office? And this fellow said, well, it's a 24th. I have salaries to pay. I have electricity bills to pay. I have rent. I have taxes. I have a bank loan. And all the orders that I got in the month, people are saying, well, we're about to come. But remember, the month is ticking. So when we are in the jam, not every one of us is thinking about the same thing. The business captains are really trying to struggle. And we want to see how we make this a reality. So we might be having a discussion of long term. There are certain people for whose long term is 1 week or 1 day. What do we do for those people? Talking about cost of credit. Last year, I had a good experience, actually not last year, very recently, with money lenders. I tried to go around to do my research and find out what is happening. I went to a bank, I said, if I had 10 million and I want to fix it, what is your rate of return? Of course, as Adam Guma said, 13%. So 10 million at the end of 12 months, you give me 1.3, and of course, Doris Akol will be aware, she'll pick off something by way of taxes. I went to a money lender, he said, 10 million, I give you 10% per month. 10%, and Doris Akol is not aware of this transaction, so I walk off with everything. Is this a time when informal is becoming formal? This is one economy, and these are the challenges that are out there, and we need to be speaking candidly what should be the solutions. So the bankers are looking for money, but now the money lender, when I went back to this same guy, said, it's tough now. The people I used to lend to are no longer coming. But a few are coming. The others, I'm struggling to sell the collateral. Somebody gives you a car card, and for 1 year you haven't found a buyer. Remember, you are the money lending business. You need liquidity to keep turning it around. These are the discussions we want to have, and Juan has given us a very good discussion on the transition from agriculture. You know, you can't just jump out of agriculture. You can graduate out of agriculture. but you can't just drop it and run into services. So I want you to speak to that transition, because it looks like 70% of our population is in agriculture. We have looked at our exports, still agriculture, and I have shown the figures here of our top importers from Uganda. Honorable Minister, why you are right, Honorable Prime Minister, the biggest importer from Uganda is Kenya. You have United Arab Emirates, you have Rwanda, you have South Sudan, you have DRC. Each of these countries, we exported to them a total of over $1 billion in the last 6 years. After those 6 countries, the next one is the Netherlands, up to about 500 million. So what is Kenya and DRC and Sudan and Rwanda buying from us? I want to believe it's agricultural products. So a good beginning. I don't even have to board a plane. You just push it over a bicycle and you're in Kenya. Push it over a wheelbarrow, you're in the DRC. Even before you wake up, the Congolese are here asking you, are you sailing? So why don't we begin with that before our plane takes off? Where are we? How did those guys do it to reduce agriculture to 2.2% of GDP? And by the way, computed, 2.2% of GDP is still $30 billion. So it doesn't mean that the percentage should deceive us. We can still grow agriculture, except the others will grow faster. You have the 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moderator. So let's start by saying that, yeah, in the case of this, the Asian tigers, let's say, the GDP share of agriculture is very small, as you said, but it's very small because it's a bigger pie, right? So at the end of, in absolute terms, it's still a very important sector. In the case of Uganda, yes, Kenya is the biggest buyer, especially of staple crops, especially maize. And we have been witnessing that in the last year. And so that is really a result of the comparative advantages that Uganda has. Now, on the other hand, there are a lot of risks with staple crops, risks that are related to policy, and especially to, if we go down into which policies, non-tariff barriers, and also in some countries we have seen in the region, there is abundance of crops, but there are export bans or export duties, and so we see a high risk in production of staple crops, and that's where I was saying at the beginning that the large number of farmers, or the majority of farmers, have issues adopting production technologies that would help and increase yields and quality, because they are unsure of whether they will be able to sell their crop. We have the case of Tanzania. There was a surplus on rice and maize at some point last year, but there was an export ban. So this stimulates agriculture. So staple crops are particularly sensitive. Now, talking about the UAE, you're not exporting maize to the UAE. You're exporting, high-value horticulture. And that's when we look at food security, most development practitioners think that food security has to be linked to farmers growing maize and rice, or millet, or whatever the staple crop is in the country. And it's not that. It is having either the crop produced at the farm or the money to buy the crop. And in this case, that migration from the staple crops to high-value horticulture is what we're seeing in Kenya and Tanzania. So last week we were looking at statistics, and we were looking at a progressive decrease of intra-regional trade of maize. And some of our colleagues were in panic mode, saying, what is happening? Is that people are going to starve? And when we started to look at the numbers, there was a replacement. People put factors of production in ventures with higher returns. Okay, so land was going from producing maize to producing snow peas, French beans, and all those high-value crops that they export to the UAE, to the Netherlands, and to the UK. So I think that migration will happen, and at the same, and that's what will attract the adoption of sophisticated technologies. Because no one is going to ever, ban exports of snow peas, right? It will happen with staple crops, but not with high-value horticulture. So we see low risk, high returns, and that's what I think that's a sector or a subsector in which Uganda could bet, really, in high-value horticulture. And we have seen the numbers from the UAE that you shared, and numbers from the Netherlands. That's the beginning of a transformation process. I think that's something that is worth incentivizing, and not to mention the collateral effects that it has in terms of forex, and job creation. So, and most importantly, infrastructure. And just to finish, talking about electricity and and linking it to market-led agriculture development, I think it is crucial to have an integrated approach in which, by discussing private sector, they can prioritize the geographic areas in which they need more road infrastructure, more irrigation, more electricity. So we can avoid the issue of having roads where there is less traffic, or having electricity where there is little demand. So I think an integrated approach of the government hand in hand with the private sector is a critical condition for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think coming out some of this discussion is the integrated approach. How do you integrate agriculture to industry? And there were an earlier panel which discussed agro-processing. We see an opportunity in ramping up agriculture from different angles. One is going to provide the much needed raw material to drive manufacturing and industries. It will create those jobs there. But also, once the agricultural households earn some money, who knows, they might resort to buy some of the power that they are not buying today, but also create some other aspects of demand and stimulate the economy. So with 70% of the households in that sector, that is one way of putting money into their hands. And then we can also ease the pressure of people waiting for government to give them services. I want to believe the government budget is already squeezed and hemmed in, and we need to find ways of how do we make households put money into their own hands. How do we stimulate that agriculture high value? And I think he's mentioned over $2 million per day that was coming in through remittances. Looking at the data, it was interesting to note that in 2011, 2012, our exports to United Arab Emirates was about $187 million. 6 years later, that had gone to 487. Threatening the entire European Union at 505. What is happening between Uganda and UAE? I think there is a lot of remittances there. We have known people have been going there. We know their challenges. So some of the quick things you want to be thinking of, how can we capitalize on this? Because the UAE is not only getting Ugandans, they are getting people from elsewhere. How can I make sure that each party is telling the other that if you need somebody from out there, the Ugandans are the best? So I would be quick to want to find out what exactly are the Ugandans doing in the UAE, how can we empower them, but also how can we do diplomatic discussions to protect them. Because this seems to be a market coming up for us that we may want to take away with and run to. And maybe it will help us ease the debt burden as I get back to Dr. Mugume on issues of debt, stabilizing foreign exchange. Because these are people who are really helping us to get the dollars in and manage the foreign exchange. The nightmare of an investor is borrowing in foreign currency, and you go back to buy using your local shillings, and exchange rate has depreciated by another 100 shillings. That can mean you need another 100 million to just pay back what you did. So anybody helping to stabilize the foreign exchange is really easing the burden for private sector practitioners, but also assisting government to pay back some of these debts. Because I don't want to believe that government makes a lot of dollars to pay back the debts in dollars. We have to use the local shillings, Doris Akore's collections, to buy these dollars. And I was looking through, again, the numbers this time. Minister of Finance, did I hack the website? Well, there was a good publication I read, that the average time to maturity of debt is reducing. In other words, our debt is having more and more of short-term debt than the usual World Bank loans of 40 years, 0.5%, 10 years of grace. So in other words, we're going to be needing more and more dollars to pay the debts, because I think I saw a reduction, average debt to time to maturity, from 12.4 years in 2015 to 12.1 years in 2016. I don't know what it is in 2017. But that reduction means you need more money to be able to pay. Adam Mugume, you sometimes help government to pay its debt, but also you see debt from other angles. So we're having a candid discussion here. What do you see in another 3-4 minutes?
It is true that, no, let me first make a correction. It is true that we export, United Arab Emirates now has become an attractive destination, but that is largely gold. There are some few elements of fruits that are coming through. So, and our value addition, we export around 400 million worth of gold after this plant in NTV. And our value addition in our estimate from Uganda is around, out of 400 million per year, is around 70 million. So we assume that the remaining is imported. So that's really where United Arab Emirates is coming through in terms of trade. It is also equally true that Middle East now is our main source of workers' remittances. Initially it was Europe. When Europe, after global financial crisis, it was South Africa, but now it is actually a Middle East. We are talking about around 60% of 1.1 billion coming from the entire Middle East. And you know the category of workers that are in that area. So basically, it is an attractive venture, and I think it has really, you know, workers' remittances into Uganda from all sources have really helped us in what we're talking about actually in terms of stabilizing the exchange rate, even when our exports were quite weak. Another correction in terms of Kenya exports is basically because of tea. Our tea auctions in Mombasa are taken as our export to Kenya. So you have to start washing out tea, which is auctioned in Mombasa, as a form of an export to Kenya before in terms of looking at the numbers. However, it is true that our exports in terms of grains to Kenya have really picked up. So in terms of maize, I think in 16-17 we saw exports of maize around to Kenya coming almost $100 million, both informal and formal. So that's substantial. So which means that we still have an inch, because I was reading the other day that actually Kenya now is restocking their stocks for maize. So we still have the potential, given the current rains, good harvest, we still have the potential to export to Kenya. DRC and actually South Sudan, I want to emphasize the two markets, because that's where we are seeing exports of right manufactured products. We are talking about, you know, things like plastics, roofing materials. Those are mainly we are going into DRC. And DRC now is actually in the region. After moving the tea exports to Kenya, DRC seems to be now #1. Now, we know the political challenges in DRC, etc. That's really our biggest. But I think we still can capture that market. Now, we have a competitor, obviously. Rwanda is coming through the other side, taking some of the market. So we have to be competitive. So that's where the cost of doing business comes on board. Remember that Rwanda ranks 41. We are ranked 122 in the cost of doing business by World Bank. So which means that we have to improve our cost of doing business index to make sure that actually the market we have for DRC, cement, roofing materials that we are exporting to DRC are not easily taken over by our competitor. Now, we can all assume that where we are all East Africans, whatever etc., But still, whether we are East Africans, you are still a Ugandan and an East African. You still want to capture some of the market because really that's the main source of employment it is. So those are some of the issues we grapple with. Now, as I said, Dr. Mumza always picks on me on that one. When my boss, the Minister of Finances, would sack me. As I said, he has borrowed money from China to construct for me a road to Isinyiro, but I'm grazing goats along the road. So what have I done to make sure that I have generated forex, not Uganda shillings, to be able to service the loan that he got from China? Basically, that was my argument of integrated approach. If you borrow money and start servicing down the road 2 years, now every year now we are talking about our service, debt service is around 300 million, and now it has increased because of the short term in terms of dollars, leave alone domestic shilling. So the question is, you must be able to generate economic activity in terms of tradables. In other words, what you can sell in Kenya as maize. Incidentally, also we have, by the way, I forgot to say, one of the things that is coming up on board now is milk products, powdered milk. Now we are started exporting milk, powdered milk. So if you can use the road that is well tarmacked to be able to have the farmers produce enough milk, be able to market it very easily, go to the factory, process it into the powdered milk and export it, then our debt problem is non-issue. But the problem, if you have the load, like the one to Chisoro, but you are not using it, the potatoes, you are still importing them, it becomes a problem. How are you going to service the loan? And unless you sell the potatoes in terms of exporting to generate forex, then you have a mismatch. So really that's where the mismatches come from. You have borrowed money, you have produced a road and infrastructure, which is really very good. But the question is, the farmers are not integrated to be able to produce for the market and also for the export to be able to generate enough income and service their own. Now, that becomes a mismatch. When you start doing that dynamics, then you say, I think it is a question we need to go through in terms of external borrowing. But equally, domestic borrowing is not easy. Again, if you do domestic borrowing, interest rates will go through the roof. So the bottom line, therefore, is once you have a project, how have you integrated the communities to use that project? To be able to produce, to be able to market what they have produced. Now, the private sector may not do it alone. That's why I was saying there must be a partnership between public, private, in all the aspects to be able really to use what we are producing in terms of those infrastructures and enter into the market. And overall, there is no way we can proceed in terms of our economic growth projections unless we generate exports. That's the bottom line. Whatever we do, whatever infrastructure we are talking about, can we be able to use the infrastructure to penetrate through international market in terms of exporting? If you can't do that, I think we'd rather have a Maram road, otherwise we'll be in trouble.
I think the borrowing question, the deficit, the need for investments, and I was following up a good discussion. I grew up in the Bunyoro area, and tarmac was only in towns. But there was one spot where they told us there is tarmac going down the escarpment. Way back in the 50s, the colonial masters were wise. They knew they couldn't find money to tarmac the entire road. But that dangerous part, they really needed tarmac there. So it's kind of, how do you prioritize when you have a constrained budget environment to really deal with the basics? And growing up as a young boy, I remember we would prioritize our clothing. You just have a trouser, a short, and then move out. The back is okay, people can see. You don't have enough budget to cover everything. And I've been seeing this discussion going on in the oil roads, We want to do oil roads. The time is not there. And I think UNRWA is coming up innovatively to say, man aside, time is an issue. Can we do the bridges, the swamps, the escarpments, the sharp bends, so that the roads begin to work? So I think we need to factor into this to be a strategy of also managing the budget. As we do our infrastructure, now enough good oil roads are going to be done, but we have said the DRC is a good market. How do we use some of these roads to actually evacuate food over Lake Albert into the Congo or wherever it is? Because there is a competition. I think the main message is we want to be very strategic, but also we're not just going to trigger the economy to grow, we must be deliberate to generate some foreign exchange. Because a lot of our debt already requires foreign exchange. If all we are going to generate is domestic currency, the depreciation will actually hit us even harder. So we need to not just ramp up growth, but also be strategic to see how do we bring the foreign exchange. How do we curb the government appetite, downsizing government? Aren't we back to 1990s? I enjoy these were my moments of learning economics and structured adjustment program. People may have said this was IMF, this was World Bank, but I thought it was economics. And it was very good economics. If you don't have enough resources, cut off some excess fat. Suspend some things and defer them. Where is this discussion? And I will be looking forward from the floor. Maybe some people will be giving us pointers. What do you do as a business executive when you really have to cut and fit your business within your budget for purposes of trying to survive? Onego Bell, how are we going to finance agriculture? Because it looks like something we need to do. There have been discussions, again, gathering people's views. Sometimes we want to represent the absentee people who are not with us here, so that their views can also come in here. And some people said, Honorable Minister, you've been struggling with the Uganda Development Bank. You haven't found the money in 5 years. You possibly are not about to find it in the next 5 years, because we see more things coming on your table that were not there. The salaries, the debt is rising up. Is it time to invite other equity investors in Uganda Development Bank? The way Africa Development Bank is financed, not just by Africans, but by other people outside Africa. Can we open up and invite some people to bring some billions of dollars? Because that bank needs billions of dollars. Because it's long-term lending. You send it out there, you don't expect it in the short term. These are some of the views people have put on the table, because we really need long-term finance, and we're not about to find it within this economy. So some views came in from there. Geoffrey, you are the expert on money matters. Where do we get long-term finance? The long-term signal you talked about, has it got some money with it?
Thank you, Fred. Sometimes we look very far when actually the solution is just in front of us. For example, from the securities industry, we have estimated that if we securitize, if I may use that word, if you securitize remittances, we could gear it up by a factor of 5. So instead of 1 billion a year, we would get 5 billion. Because the typical Ugandan out there sends money not because there's an instrument which has been thrown at him, but just because somebody from Pakwach rang that, oh, your auntie is sick, can you send some money? In the post-summit engagement, which we're looking forward to, we think we can put on the table practical instruments which you can use to get these remittances, which are coming without any, they're just coming on their own. We all know that, for example, interest rates out there are very flat. Interest rates here are higher. In the securities industries in Nairobi, Kampala here, Dar es Salaam, we see big money from London, New York coming here to take advantage of the better margins here, and then the following week the money goes out. That is some of the FDI which we capture. For us, we call this low quality FDI because it stays for a short time and goes away. So there are resources there which we really need to sit down for once, for a change, and say, now, how can we get this? How have other people got them? Now, that's what we think as a sector or a subsector we can bring to the table. I just wanted to make another brief comment on agriculture. Our own history in this region has shown us that the key trigger for agriculture is really the buying function. The typical farmer, we know very well, we all come from parents who have grown things. If you tell a Ugandan, you grow this like so, I will buy it, he will grow it. But now when he grows it, and then he brings it to you, and then you don't buy it, he will not grow it. So the most important thing is the buying function. Okay, giving seeds is okay. Providing extension is okay, but the most important signal, as we say, is the buying function. Give the assurance that you are going to buy that thing. He will even ask you, how do you want me to grow it? Once you have started buying from him or her. So, resources are there. We don't look down on Uganda shillings. We don't look down on domestic currency. That is domestic direct investment. There are tools for trapping what economists like Fred call DDI. There are tools for attracting that. Uganda currency is very, very important. What is necessary is that it should be monetized. When my friend Governor and Mugume issue what they call M1, total money, immediately maybe 40, 50, even 60% of it goes out of the financial system. The banking system is too shallow. We have no depth. But we are not here to talk about those problems. We want now, over the next timeline of 2 cycles of 5 years from 2018, let us engage and say, look, we want all the money within the next 10 years issued by the central bank to be within the monetized system. How do we go about it? Others have done it. So we are quite confident, we are quite sure, and nobody has, on this panel, and I'm sure nobody anywhere has said that we cannot do it. We can do it. Because we are the most confident people in our own economy. The least confident people are, frankly speaking, the FDI chaps. Because they're the ones who come and go very quickly, but we are here, Paka last, as we say here.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes, we are here.
We have nowhere to go anywhere, and we love our country. I think that's an important thing, talking about direct domestic investment. Quite often people want to talk about foreign direct investment. What is our strategy for direct domestic investment? And he has mentioned an important thing about assurance of markets. And thank you, Bank of Uganda, for bringing us Dr. Chang the other day. He came and gave us some good statistics to say, well, between 1960 and 80, growth per capita GDP was 1.6 in sub-Saharan Africa. After 1980 to 2016, that has collapsed to 0.3. So in other words, we have been growing at a slower rate. Of course, partly the population is increasing very fast, but also the economies haven't grown as fast as to catch up. So it looks like our growth rate over the last 40 years is slower in sub-Saharan Africa compared to those other days. And I want to remember growing up, one of the assurances that was there in the 70s was grow your coffee, the cooperative will take it. There was an assurance of that. They may not pay on time, but they will take it. So how do we guarantee some of these farmers that this is going to be taken up? But again, talking about unlocking the money that is locked up in this economy, because we think even as we look for new money, there is some money already locked up by accidents of history. And part of this discussion is how do we resolve those? And I had a discussion earlier on with the CMA boss, Keith Kalyegira, and we noticed the last 10 years or so we have been investing heavily in real estate. Now real estate seems to have turned down the corner, but there is a lot of money locked in there. How do we unlock the money that is in real estate? Some people have built flats of 8 units, they are not tenants. But there's a Ugandan out there who is trying to build a house. How do we link the two? So that possibly this Ugandan can buy the other person's house, and we have a condominium law. So you can find some people so that the other person who has locked in 2 billion can get some money back through these ones who want to build houses, but they need a mortgage. Again, long-term finance, because the reason they are building themselves is they want to do it over 8 years. The other party wants their money quickly. And I know Celestino here is in the business of looking for long-term finance into Meme. I know I've had discussions that we want to, and we are still struggling, liberalize the pension sector so that we can unlock pension money, because it's supposed to be long-term. But already there are other people out there whose pension sectors are liberalized. And I want to believe some of these have been investing with Celestino. How do you go about attracting long-term capital? I know your concession is becoming a problem, because I've talked to others who say, I can't give that man my long-term money because I don't know how much he exists. And I think this is back to the Minister of Finance. We need to be, it's beginning to constrain investment in the energy sector. But leave that to the ministry, it's not for today. How do you go about attracting long-term capital, especially of these fund managers that I think Geoffrey is saying they come in short term, where he sees them, but for you, some of them have come long term.
Okay, thank you. I think that's an important point. I'll give a personal experience, really, having been exposed to the whole Umeme from the beginning through the transaction, through listing, saying that one, the capital markets gives us a good opportunity to access capital for infrastructure development. And also, having done a lot of road shows, interacted with international funds, it's also true that there are a number of pension funds outside there that are looking for a fair return. Their rates are really around 1 or 2%. So anyone who gives any return above that will attract them. But also what they want is, they want to see stability and regulation, they want to see stable macro environment, they want to see that if I put in my dollars, can I get them back? And also they want to take a view of the country in terms of where it's going 10, 20 years from where we are now. And specifically, if you look at infrastructure businesses, these go hand in hand with what we call private-public partnerships, where the private sector can come in and complement government on delivering services to the citizens. Not that government cannot deliver these services, but it's a choice of, do the citizens receive this service now, slightly with private sector participation, or do they wait longer? And what we see, it's a good platform, and I agree that on a number of infrastructure projects, not only in energy, the other time I was talking to the ED UNRA, where she was insisting that the Ginger Express Highway, given the volumes there, they are going to use private-public partnership, where private players will come in with their money, put up an express highway, then the choice of users of that road who want to move faster to Ginger, right, will pay a little bit of money, and in the long run, it's a win-win for government and the private sector. That takes off a bit of pressure from government to focus on other investments. And it's true, really, that we can exploit the capital markets in Uganda to attract these long-term funds. I have looked, we've met several of them. When I look around the funds that we have been able to attract, I mean Alan Gray, Coronation, the IFC, you know, so many funds from South Africa, from Europe, from America. They look at Uganda, and I've seen some of them starting to look elsewhere where they can put their money. Really, we should use the capital markets to mobilize long-term financing to complement.
What are they seeing in Uganda that is making them look elsewhere? What are they not seeing in Uganda that is making them look elsewhere? And I want to see that the other people were competing for these cheap funds. You see, now we're talking about cheap funds. Somebody is saying, if you give me 3%, I have no problem. In Uganda, our banks are borrowing at 13% to lend to us, settled at a higher rate. Out there is some money we can tap into. What do we need to do? And we are beginning to compete because I think it was just a few weeks ago, the British government, for once after 10 years, raised their interest rate. And when they raise interest rate, capital may flow there. They just increase from 0.25% to 0.75%. Minuscule if you're talking about Uganda, but it is very significant for the guys that Celestino is talking about. They might look, if they see us more risky than the British, and I know the British are fighting Brexit, so they also want to still attract capital, so we're not in this space alone. Joanne, you mentioned something that capital fears or deals with two things, is incentives and risk. Now, we have a risk issue here. We're also thinking we have some incentives. Do you want to speak to those two further? Going by your global experience, I see Trump also in the US is trying to get some money back, getting America to #1 again, America first. And is battling with many, many things, trying with the taxes. And where do you see us and how can we leverage to mitigate? What risks do people see here? You are in the trade and investment hub at the region. You possibly have listened to something that we haven't heard.
Well, thank you. And, okay, I would like to start by saying we have a sister project called the Southern Africa Trade and Investment Hub. They have been very successful at attracting pension funds. Especially from the U.S. As of now, they are at about $18 million that these American pension funds have invested in South Africa and in Namibia, the part of the countries in which some of the countries in which they operate. When talking to my colleagues there, they say, well, it is two things. One, lack of knowledge, like how many fund managers in the U.S. know that they could get 13% in Uganda, for example, or that they could get 11% in Kenya. No, they don't know that yet. Second, it is talking about the uncertainty and how to reduce that. It is strict regulations. From what I hear, the Central Bank of Uganda is very well managed, has strict regulations, manages risk well. That's something that needs to be communicated to the people that have the money. So I think it's not that Uganda is riskier, is it that the investors are unaware of the possibilities, of the opportunities, and most importantly, they are unaware of the institutional arrangements and the strength of the institutions themselves in the country. And that's where Uganda needs to promote itself as an investment destination.
Quite an addition to promote Uganda, gifted by nature. We have been doing this for tourism. But I think we haven't opened the window for those who have money and they want to bring in here. Possibly when they hear Uganda, they think that's another football club. Or maybe they think that is another Amewam. Have we sold ourselves? Have we sold the successes of the central bank? The stability, so that these people can actually begin to think of Uganda as a good destination. Surely, if people are ready to put their money where they get 3%, if we offered them 5%, that's a good thing. And looks that we can, but we haven't exported ourselves. So I think promoting Uganda needs to go beyond just tourism. Let's also promote other things and market ourselves to other unlikely sources, but whom we desperately need. Now, I'm tired of hearing men's voices here. You've been told apologies from Barbara Murwana, who should have been on this panel. I really would have loved to hear a feminine voice. Celestino is not exactly the substitute for Barbara. So I'm opening up a window for...
Yes, Fred, I am mobile. I'll pick the ladies first. So
yes, please.
You do the honors.
It's still my space on the panel, but I've opened it up for Barbara Murwana.
I'm looking for the ladies with the hands up. I'm happy to. At your discretion, Fred, I'll go where you.
Let's share the discretion. Where you see her, and you see that hand first, just pick it up. Ladies, where are we? Or we don't face these challenges, or we throw them to men.
Very good. I had thought because there's a lot of members in NSSF, Patrick was going to speak on behalf of the ladies.
He doesn't have that voice.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay. For now, it is just the voice. Patrick, the name, and
okay. Thank you, Fred. I'm Enid. I'm a private consultant, mostly consulting in agriculture finance. Maybe two issues for Uganda. One, we do not have a strategy for developing our financial sector to serve the needs of the different sectors. If you look at the NDP, the financial sector is hidden under the accountability section. Why didn't we pick this up as an area that really needs to be developed so that it can drive the sectors that we're looking at? I think the other issue is to do with our approach to agricultural development. Because we usually talk about commercialization. But when you look in the documents that we have, it's like we want to continue with the selling of primary products rather than developing the agriculture sector as a base for industry. I think this is an area that we need to look at, because if you are developing agriculture for industry, of course you do it differently than if you are developing agriculture just to sell raw products. That would be my contribution.
Thank you very much. An important point of, as we've said, we're not just going to grow the economy, we need to grow it deliberately with a bias to promote tradables. We need to generate some foreign exchange for very many reasons. But also, as we grow the financial sector, we need to know that the needs of the clients are many. Some need working capital, some need different things in there. Agricultural finance cannot be structured in the same way as you structure credit finance for downtown. Because agricultural people can afford to pay you once if you give them 4 months when they have harvested. But unfortunately, by Bank of Uganda standards, that will already be a non-performing asset, 90 days. How do we begin to look at these kinds of things? Because this guy borrowed to grow beans, to grow maize. Give him 4 months, he will pay you one off and you go. He has harvested. But if you want him to pay after 30 days, where is he going to get the money? So I think we need to go deeper into some of those things. Patrick, now I can entertain a man's voice.
Patrick, please stand so the cameras can see you, this very handsome face. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Patrick Ayota. I'm the Deputy Managing Director with NSSF. Just a question that I think was not answered, and that's Dr. Muhomuza. You give us the chicken and egg story. So let's just say that Umeme produces about 600 plus kilowatts. The exports will reach to 900. The consumption is 575. He says they cannot sell more because the industry says they can only take 70% because there's no market for them to sell their products. The question we would not ask here is how then do we create that demand? If you think about the only thing that can create that demand are two: either export it or create jobs so that you can have domestic consumption. Now, who is in the best place to create a job for a developing economy? And we've not touched at all. What I'm asking here is for us as Ugandans to consider one thing: a mindset change. Let me. In 2008, the global crisis had collapsed. There was other banks were going to collapse anyway, Bank of America, Citi, and so on. The Treasury Department in the U.S. collected all the CEOs in one room, and the government of the Americans pumped in money to stop these banks from collapsing. Last year, we had the fourth largest bank with the issues. What did we do as Ugandans? We closed it and sold it. How many people lost their jobs because we didn't do what the government of the U.S. did? Pump money in it, prop it up, save the jobs, and we do that. Of the industries that we have, how many just need a little intervention in money so they can raise up their capacity for either export or quality so that they can hire more people and increase demand? And if you look at countries like China, Rwanda, Kenya, that's exactly what they do. That the government actually pumps in money, comes and intervenes. But we Ugandans have kind of said, no, wait a minute, let the private sector drive it. The private sector has no capacity in this country to drive it. It must be propped up until that time that the private sector can actually pick up and do it. Now, where's the money going to come from? And the answer, this was actually answered by Dr. Mugume. We still can borrow. And as long as you borrow and put in some place where the money can be repaid, you're fine. As long as we have the political discipline to do that. So maybe let's have a bit of a mindset change so that our government becomes more involved in cooperative changing, cooperative creation, so that all these things we increase the demand of Ugandans to consumer products. Thank you.
Fred, Patrick would have gone on and on, but I had to stand next to him. And he holds the largest fund, so we should be borrowing from him. I guess he's asking us to go to him. There's a gentleman who said he employs a lot of women at Vision Group. So I'll ask Robert. Yeah.
Trust him to go through the ventilator. You are allowed. It's a window and a door. We have revolving doors this side.
Thank you. My name is Kab Shenga. I am a coffee and matoke farmer. And that's the capacity in which I would like to speak now.
Is that why you have employed the women? I know.
I think I want to agree with two people and then offer my solution. So first of all, with Geoffrey Onegio-Bell, we have some immediate solutions staring at us. We are going to London. Number two, I'd like to agree with Patrick that we need a mindset change. But the mindset change must begin with people who are in this room, including those of you seated up there. You're focusing on completely the wrong things. You see, Adam, whom I have the highest regard, says money was borrowed from China and a good road was made to Isinjiro, which is correct. The sad thing about that road is that it didn't go far enough, because 40 kilometers down the road there is a farmer with 56 acres of matoke, and he exports matoke to London twice a month. He has never been to school. He has never been to London. When I asked him how did he manage to get the contacts and pricing, he asked me, haven't you ever heard of the internet? He's called Bruce Venywanira. You can go and look for him and spend time with him. He's there in Rugaga. The point for me which I would like to make is all these big solutions about agricultural funding, they're not important. The first thing we need to do is register all the farmers in this country for purposes of borrowing. Whether they want to borrow or not is not the issue. Register them, their wives, their children, their relatives, and every year ask them to update for purposes of your records. If he has got another wife, he indicates. If children have reduced, he indicates. And the reason I'm saying so is that part of the prohibition for farmers and small businesses in Uganda is the sheer mind-boggling amount of documentation that you are required to do to be able to borrow money in this country. I am very educated, very well connected. It took me a month, 1 month, to access ACF. And you know, Adam, I'm very well connected. Now, imagine a farmer in Rugaga or in Zombo in Nebi, when he goes and is given a full sheath of papers to fill and sign by a small, well-dressed girl, very well made up, asking him how many children he has, to go and get the permission of his wife in order to borrow. This guy looks at this girl and he goes to the money lender who will give him the money immediately. While you are processing my papers in Bank of Uganda in December, you have to go on holiday for Christmas, come back after 2 weeks in January. The planting season is a month away. These issues are not issues, they don't need intellectualizing. I have challenged the Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Prime Minister. This is your cabinet which sits here in Kampala all year round. Send them for 3 months to live with the people. Let them commit class suicide. Let them see how the real people, the 1 million coffee farmers who generate the income of this country, suffer. If we solve the simple problem of school fees, you would solve the production of coffee and the quality of the coffee that we receive by almost 30%. People are selling coffee, their produce early because they want fees. People are not being paid on time because that's why they don't borrow. Fix counterfeit fertilizer and seedlings. Our production will go up. That's a policing issue. It's not, it doesn't need investors from Wall Street. We don't have to go and talk about our interest rates. How much money is spent on the things that really don't matter very much?
Okay.
So my answer to you is, register the farmers, change the policy on people's borrowing, and look at the money that we waste on things that don't matter, and you will get funding. This wasting English here is not going to take us anywhere.
Thanks, Robert. I think we are getting some solutions here, and I want to respond to those two kind of submissions as well. We have said here government can go and borrow. That's one way of getting money into this economy. But we can also attract private capital to come in through the stock exchange, and that can be cheaper. So the government borrows to do what the government should do, but we're also short of private capital. How do we get equity? By tapping into the pension funds. Celestino has already been bringing in money here, and I believe there are other people out there. So we cannot just say government should be the only one to bring in borrowed money. The private sector can bring in even a lot more money to us. We have agreed that the current financial sector is not tailored towards agricultural borrowing. So Robert, we agree with you.
Just a minute. Yes.
We agree with you.
Yeah. Sorry, one small thing I forgot. Please do not bring foreign money into UDB. If need be, let us be like the Ethiopians. Let us fundraise from amongst ourselves and fund UDB. If you bring foreign money, they'll come with certain requirements which will make it impossible for us to go and borrow that money. First, they'll even hire an office which is impossible for us to go into. So please don't bring foreigners into our UDB. We don't want them.
Good opinion for you. But some of us have seen this work, and Africa Development Bank is not Africa's money. But we borrow from Africa Development Bank. It has been equipped. You do not have sufficient money to capitalize a development bank in this country to begin with.
Fred,
there's a lot of money out there.
Yeah, before you get, can I just take one more here? Then please do. I'll come back to you. You can.
No, I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue on the floor.
Okay. There's one here.
Thank you. My name is Alex Rezida, and this evening I participate as a person who comes from Kisoro. And on 3 points, just to compliment on what has just been said. One, please don't scare the Minister of Finance about borrowing money for roads. Adam, those roads where the goats and cows are walking are a very good problem to have. A very good problem to have. And I said Kisoro for a reason. The good tarmac road reaches Kisoro. There is Mugahinga, which is 23 kilometers from Kisoro town, and there's Bwindi, which is a bit further. I'll talk about Mugahinga. Last December, I took my family to the national park from Mugahinga. At 3 points, we have to get out of the vehicle because of the stones that were coming out of what a few months before that was a fairly good Maram road. The point here is, and Kaushenga touched it, these good problems are not going deep enough. You go and look at the figures that Mugahinga generates in terms of foreign exchange. And I'm glad that finally that 25 kilometers, I'm glad is now listed for tarmacking. That unlocks a lot in an area that we are not looking at. tourism. I know we've talked a lot about tourism as a country, but not enough. Look at what Kenya is earning. Look at what other countries are earning from that sector, because your drive is, we need to do things that bring in foreign exchange. What do we have compared to Kenya? Or what do they have compared to us? We have more. The other that we never keep focus on is the land question, and we need to be talking about this all the time. The land question. It's not fair that because we keep Celestino so busy, and he goes to his village probably in December, that he finds someone occupied his land just because he was away, and it becomes an issue. It shouldn't be. The land is Celestino's, whether he's there or not. So the land question is a difficult question in terms of agriculture. And it's going to keep us at a certain level that is not undesirable. So we need to be talking about the very things that touch the potentials that we already have before we go to look for the very big things out there.
Thank you.
So the land question is key, and it needs to be addressed, and addressed sooner than later.
Thank you.
Again, on foreign exchange, how do we rate it? Dr. Musa has already told us how much we've earned in exporting to Kenya and South Sudan and DRC. What is it that we're exporting? It is from the small farmers. How do we fund them? Dr. Kaushenga has just talked about the difficulties of getting, sorry, Dr. Kaushenga, the difficulties of getting finance for the appropriate farmers that we have. Let's not look for solutions very far. What are these farmers doing? How are they going about it? Who sustains the moneylenders' business in this country? Why should I go to a moneylender who is giving money at a higher rate than a commercial bank? Those are the areas we need to talk about. Why shouldn't I go to a commercial bank? Why should I go to a moneylender at a higher rate? So these are the key areas that we need to focus on for the short term, short to medium.
Sure.
Before we look at the long term and so on.
Yeah, thank you. I think we quite a number of these things we are on the same page. You have actually emphasized the point of Dr. Adam Mugume on the road, because he said the road to Isingro has cows around it. You have just qualified the road to Kisoro has tourism around it. So how can we make sure that all these roads are integrated into the economy, that every infrastructure we do is not an end in itself, that we're actually doing this infrastructure to integrate them into other things? We have, thank God for the Prime Minister's business, that we got this biotechnology law going through. I hope it has been signed. Because while you're talking about banana, the banana bacteria wilt is ready to reduce your production by half. But our scientists have already come up with a solution, and they are waiting for the law to be able to cure that. This is an integrated approach, and I think this discussion is trying to stimulate how wider should we go, how deep should we go to get this economy going. We need this economy growing. 4% is not good enough when you have a population growth rate of 3.1. And you have all these debts, as we are saying. They are actually coming. Roads may be a good problem, good roads. What Adam Mugume sees is the debt repayment. And that is not a good problem. And the two are just two sides of the same coin. So depending on where you're holding it, we want to address both. That the other good problem actually becomes a good thing, but also enables us to be able to manage, I think, the debt. Chicken and egg, I have already told people, it looks for me, in Uganda we ate the chicken. So we no longer have that paradox of the chicken and the egg. We are only left with the egg, thank God. I'm praying it is fertilized, because now we can conveniently walk with it to an incubator and get the next chicken. But we already hemmed in from all angles. When you say government should, Honorable Minister here, I'm sure the letters he sees, I saw some of them when I was there. Right now, the letters you really don't want to see, and they are going to keep coming, salaries. Already there is a 2 trillion that he needs to find next year to enhance salaries. Our revenues are going down. We need to look beyond government. Where are these solutions going to come from? I think this is the discussion we want to have. Let me get to another lady from Kisoro. I'm finding them. I'm beginning to find them.
You're actually right. She's from Kisoro.
It takes a good road to find these ladies.
Thanks, Fred. My name is Doreen, and I'm with PwC. So my question is, we keep talking about attaining the middle income status by 2020. That's 2 years away. Our population is growing at 3% per annum, and right now it's at 38 million. Our GDP is at 26 billion. Projected growth is around 5% currently and 6% next year. Can we still achieve this target, and how are we going to achieve it in 2 years?
I don't think he's from Kisoro. Or I'll start with Eli, then I'll go to.
We are going to.
Eli has.
We're supposed to have been middle income status by 2017.
We pushed it.
We pushed it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to push it, but we may. And I think these are the issues we really are talking about here. Uganda's population doubles every 20 years. And that is even coming down now. We're going to be doubling every 16 years. So we're 35 million the other year. In another 16 years, we're going to be 70 million. While you even talk about jobs, what are we going to be eating? Where are we going to be sleeping? These are discussions we really want to have. Land is limited, so we must ramp up agricultural productivity for jobs, for food security. Mr. Kaboy, you might find some blank check that I've given you to say what you wanted to say.
Thank you, sir. Just to say that this discussion comes very timely, especially at this time when we're having a serious set of difficult economic factors that are quite unfavorable. Now, I just wanted to start off on sort of a controversial note and say all of us here seem to be so obsessed with growth, but not really thinking where is that growth coming from that comes with jobs. So we seem to be concerned about this growth, regardless of where it's coming from. But clearly, I should say, growth is a necessary condition. But let us analyze and see where is it coming from. From that perspective, I want to suggest that perhaps we need to be looking at re-evaluating our growth, Uganda growth strategy. And I just want to point out about 6 key areas, which I would call action areas, since we're here not to lament, but look for solutions in the short term that are going to give us a greatest impact in terms of restoring competitiveness, bringing back the economy to a growth trajectory. And these 6 areas, some of them have been touched on. One is agriculture. When you look at our agriculture and the budget provisions that are made by Honorable Minister here, 3%, which is maybe 3 to 5%, this, I think, even violates the Maputo Declaration. A little bit more money, Honorable Minister, can go a long way in terms of providing research, providing information for our farmers, understanding the markets. And key in those things, since we depend on rain for our agriculture, do our farmers have a weather forecasting approach to this? Do we know when the rains are going to come or stop? So a little bit more funding in that area, Honorable Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, would be a very good point to start from in terms of looking at the low-hanging fruits that can bring back competitiveness. The second area is actually in the area of public investments. How do we increase efficiency in this? Clearly, when you look at the returns of the public investments currently are less than expected because of the inefficiencies, lack of execution. weak project monitoring. All these are issues that we talk about every day. But what is the solution in terms of that happening? Again, the PPPs. I had somebody talk about PPPs. Where are they? The law is in place, but where are the regulations to implement this? Then, one thing that touches very close to Honorable Karuhanga's heart is local content. Local content in these projects in order to create local capacity and create jobs. Third action area, Mr. Moderator, I'm going to finish very quickly, is financial sector. We've been talking about a challenge of long-term capital into this economy. The money that is available for commercial banks, which is the bulk of the money in the financial sector, goes for about 5 years. What kind of project are you going to develop in 5 years and be able to make money? That's the mismatch we get, and that's where we go to for the bailouts. So the other issue here, again, which is sort of put aside and has been politicized, is the issue of the contractual savings, NSSF being one of them. We are talking about 9 trillion shillings in the economy, very unproductively deployed. How do we bring this debate back, Honorable Prime Minister, on the forefront and take out politics in terms of NSSF money? Let us look at things that can bring capital, long-term capital into the economy, and we move forward. The other issue is 90% of our businesses as SMEs. Can't we create an SME fund out of this whole NSSF fund? Let me quickly jump. I'll jump 2 or 3 and conclude because I see Mr. Mugisha is here with me.
Yeah, we have already given us 7 actually.
Okay, let me talk about the fiscal discipline and governance. The other day somebody was making a joke, said if you go on NTV Road on a cabinet day and see the 4x4s that are going on NTV Road, you may think it's a 4x4 rally. Can't we cut down on that expenditure? Honorable Prime Minister, with all due respect, I think there is a will to be able to bring these costs in public sector down and save some money. Lastly is the debt. The debt, somebody talked about debt here. We have not busted our thresholds. Talking about 38%, Kenya is above 54%, but clearly we are at a risk because this is a small, closed economy. We have very narrow capital markets. Our saving levels are very low. If we continue with not very well structured debt and go to China, we are going to get bogged down. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Important discussions, good points to carry forward. I think Patrick, you have already told us, we will have asked whether the NSSF money is inefficiently deployed. I sometimes believe it's already all committed in different areas. If NSSF wanted their money, Minister of Finance here will have to write them the check because the bulk of the money is already within government systems. So how much is available? I don't know. That's why I'm looking for pensions abroad, which can give us some more money of 3%, 2%. Celestino has been tapping. You have some minerals. Okay, it's a blank check. You write on what you have.
Thank you. I just want to talk about jobs. And I want, first of all, to thank God for keeping me this long and alive, because I have just been thinking about how my father could not do what I am doing and how I am not going to do what my children are doing. Nor will they do what my grandchildren will be doing. This morning when I woke up, let me share this with you, Prime Minister and honorable ministers. When I woke up, 2 of my young children, one my own, another one her friend, were in the car park very early in the morning, and her friend had come to pick my daughter. And I said, where are you going? They said, we are going to the market. I said, what are you going to buy? No, we are going to interview people who peel matoke. The ladies who are peeling in the market. I said, why? Oh, we are going to do a blog and also a video conferencing with some people, and it's going to be big business. I said, the matoke business? Say no. You know, they peel without looking at the banana. They peel professionally. I said, and then from there we are going to visit in the market also women who are doing a shabwe. How from G you can put something, a sauce that can be used and you get hooked to it. And the world doesn't know about these things in Uganda because nobody knows that Uganda has bananas and this is how they are prepared and that is how they enjoy it and this is how women cook them, and so the whole world can come here and see what is going on. Then I realized that I'm incapable of doing and thinking the same way as my children. And clearly, last night here, I met a young boy. He said, Mr. Karanga, I want to introduce myself to you. I really like when you are making speeches, you dress very well, you look very good. I am always that I'll be like you when I grow up. I said, thank you. I said, what do you do? He said, you see this music you hear when people phone you? I said, yes. And then there is a song? I said, yeah. I am the one who puts it there. I said, how long have you done this? He said, for about 6 years. I said, and then I get paid 43 shillings per music every time you listen. And I'm so happy I have employed people. Now I called the boy to employ him. He's 19. I said, what's strange with him? Yeah, he told me when I was interviewing him, he said, I have accepted to give you, I've accepted to recruit you. He said, but I'm the one recruiting you. He said, no, I'm giving you in the 6 months. I said, why? He said, because this boy is a unique genius. I said, how? The boy has transformed my company, and I'm probably going to end up being one of these people you see who are world renowned, like the people who recently discovered Facebook. Then I said, can I buy you a drink? He said, no. Actually, the hotel buys me a drink here. I eat free. I'm one of the people who have a free card. These are people who are below 30. We are sitting here planning for 70% of our population, and we are not aware. Our leaders are probably planning for some people who are not part of this conversation. Let's stop and think. Jobs, local content, reaching and skilling these young people. Get to their hearts, get them out of employment, let them think as entrepreneurs. There are no boundaries. We have people who could be better than anyone you have seen anywhere in the Silicon Valley. I want to tell you something that concerns our generation. All these roads you are talking about are being done by foreign companies. Supposing we had local content, that all these roads being built, there will be a Ugandan and participating in the business of road making, and that money will stay in Uganda. Imagine how much capacity would have built, and we would not need anybody from anywhere in the world to just simply build a road. A road, just tractors, and you move this bloody soil and put thing on top of it, and yet we have to employ. Ugandans are not participating. Those who try, they ask you, how much experience do you have to do roads? Show me your experience. How can I be able to be like CCC, who is sponsoring this conference, the Chinese company? We need to ask them to participate with Ugandans, and if we don't have entrepreneurs, let the government create a road unit. How can we have oil in Uganda and there's not a single Ugandan who is owning part of our oil which was given to us by God? All these minerals that we have, which can finance our economy, triggering Uganda's economy through sustainable growth. Honestly, you are talking about Dubai now taking a lot of money from us, and it's gold, 400. How much money has government put in gold? What about our copper? Kirembe, we are sitting there with Kirembe for all this long. We are not doing nothing. So I am so happy that there is a mindset, a change of heart, to see the Minister of Finance, a Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda, sitting here with us until this late hour. There is a mindset. When did we last see a prime minister sitting with us in a meeting like this, talking about young people? And I'm sure the whole day he's coming from another big meeting. If I'm not mistaken, tomorrow morning we will be with Presidential Investors Round Table, where we're discussing again this thing. The whole country, when I go to bars to drink, I find young people talking about agriculture, talking about the future. They have left their jobs, they have gone home. I am so impressed about our country, and I believe that our country is on an unstoppable march. This quality of people sitting in this room, if they open their brains, this Uganda is unstoppable. And I'm so encouraged to know that even in my old age, I'm going to see one of the best successful countries in the world. The last week alone, we received delegations from Iran, Russia, Canada, and I was addressing them. Canada, France, India, United Emirates, Saudi Arabia. Tonight, the Nigerians, 21 of them, are in this town looking to hear about mining and oil and gas, and they wanted me to address them, but I'm here. Tomorrow, we have let me tell you, everybody is coming to our country. The fact why we had governments before, why had they never got all these roads done? Why didn't we have these leaders sitting with us before like they're doing now? Why didn't we have NTV broadcasting like it is? What quality of broadcasters would you have? Look at Morris here. When they are talking, you think you are listening to CNN. This is, honestly, there is so much hope in this country. There is so much hope in the quality of conversation I meet. I am a lawyer by profession. When I meet the young lawyers in my law firm, I can tell you I get amazed. These people could be professors in Oxford. They are just highly qualified. All of them highly with PhDs, master's degree. They are second to none. We have a wonderful country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thinking outside the box, what is the future like? Do we know which skills are going to be needed? Do we know what kind of infrastructure do we need? How do we leverage what we already have? And I got some interesting statistics that have never left my mind. About the US, 1991, there were 3 big companies transacting in steel and cars. Their total worth was $36 billion. They were employing 1.2 million people. 3 companies, 36 billion. 2014, the top big 3 companies were over $1 trillion, employing 127,000 people. Jobs may not come from where they were in the past. The people he's talking out here, the young people, we don't know what their future is going to be. Thank God we have them. We have to nurture them. And I think this is the conversation we want to have. What's the future like? Where should we be investing? I want to pick a few more, maybe 2. 2 hands. Yes, I have Dr. Zaramba there. And who else? Did I see another hand that side? Yes, I have another lady. Maurice, from there, you're going to get me another lady. The good roads are beginning to give me some, but this is IT, I think, now is also connecting me.
Thank you very much. As you have heard, Dr. Zaramba, I'm a retired civil servant. Moderator, you have just been told by Jeff there that we have solutions in our hands. And you yourself have just given us demographics and figures about population growth. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not be shy to talk about solutions. Some of us have talked until we are completely finished about population growth in this country. Whatever we are saying, unless we curb that 3 point whatever it is on population growth, whatever you're saying, we are just wasting time. There is no way you can manage economy, a country can manage economy when the population is increasing, doubling every 10 years. Nowhere. So please don't be shy, Honorable Minister. Talk about family planning. I will tell you that Kenya started seriously in the 80s. By the year 2000, the results were very clear. We have been shy, tired, we need population, we need the numbers, but please, having more than 1 million mouths to feed every year is too much for any country, especially a country of our size. So please, whatever we do, Mr. Prime Minister, let us open up and talk about family sizes. Otherwise, we shall never make it. Secondly, just early, 2015, I had about 2 weeks in Ethiopia. I came back a very disappointed man, talking about local content. Because I visited the countryside, I went all over talking about construction companies. I saw them constructing those roads. At the time they were testing the railway in Addis Ababa, I was impressed to see that the majority, almost 90% of the workers, were Ethiopians. I never saw a foreign bank. All these telephone companies are all local, run by local people. Mr. Prime Minister, we have to do something about it.
We are inviting foreigners to invest in our telecom company. Is there an issue of corruption here? I don't want to live without saying that word. You may not give me an answer, but I think when I hear the failure to implement the government projects, I think there is something that the eye doesn't see, but the legs and hands are failing. How do we fix some of these issues? Local content, we have iron ore in Muko. Why is it sitting underground? And we are here importing a lot of steel. As I showed you, India is the biggest source of imports, and the bulk of this is iron and steel. What happened to Muko? We want to really move the discussion into these practicalities. That would have been retained here. The $5 billion of imports over the last 5-6 years should have been retained here. That iron ore is sitting underground. I have a lady. I don't want to eat in 2 times of my ladies.
Thank you very much for the time. My name is Jedida Gaheru. I belong to an organization called Center for Equity Promotion. It is supposed to be covering East Africa, but I thought I should start in Uganda so that we can do pilots. Now, we are looking at children, youth, and women. And most of the issues that we're looking at is actually based on smallholder farmers. The youth, a cross-section of our youth, as we do, we are in Hoima and Wakiso. And a cross-section of our youth are actually a critical mass. Youth that went to school, youth that dropped out of primary school, youth that went up to O-level and either did not do very well or did well and went to A-level, youth that have gone through to university, did courses that did not skill them in anything, and they're just out there in the communities. Now, when you're looking at that cross-section of human resource that is being wasted, then we are looking at what are the skills you can give them so that they become useful. So we look at agriculture because it happens to be next to the communities. Now, the story is they want to grow tomatoes, cabbage, and so on, and then they tell you, I go to Karere Market and I find a university student at Makerere selling onions at a time when he's supposed to be in class because he doesn't have the money to support his education. And he tells me he sells the whole day, he gets about 100,000 and at least he does something. Now, when you go back to these others and you tell them, what would you do? They say, if we had internet, we'd know what people want and we would grow that and sell. There's no internet because in the rural areas, power is not accessible. Umeme is not accessible so much in the rural areas. And when it is, it has to be paid for. So my question is there a way we can get internet using alternative power so that the youth who are in the rural areas and would like to do some farming can learn internet and then market and so on, search for whatever. That's one. Children, there was a study done in this country, children say that poverty, the main child poverty is as a result of low education. And well, in our neighborhood, Kenya is now introducing IT for children. In the rural areas, unless you want to maintain IT in towns, in the rural areas there's no power to provide children with a place where they can have internet. So we are looking at setting up community centers where children can go. And so my question is, where do we go when we want to power using alternative sources?
Okay.
Yeah. And then informal sector. Please just allow me once more. Informal sector. Some of these youth, one of them, a couple, decided to set up a shop where they buy from the other youth the tomatoes, the Irish potatoes, and so on, and then sell as wholesale. And they are doing very well now. But you find that most of the tomatoes get rotten because they don't have, controlled temperatures like cold rooms where they can put the stock and then others can now come to buy from them, which would be a very useful thing. That's my...
Thank you very much. Candid stories from the ground, but I think continuing with the IT, I'm still looking forward to when we are going to shift our extension services to WhatsApp. I know every farmer is within a mile or square mile of a WhatsApp phone. And word, once it gets into one person, can spread like a bushfire. Let's rethink, find technology to leverage our budgets. It's very efficient. People are using it already in very many things. I want to get back to my panelists. Yuan, you have been listening in. This is a Ugandan talk. You are in this region. You are Ugandan who can give you a piece of house to rent. But please give us what are your key takeaways that you would want us to really take note of out of this discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I remember earlier this day, we were talking about sharing experiences from other countries, from our own experiences doing development work, and talking about agriculture. There is, I think, you are on the right track. Jeff was talking about markets, about people need to have certainty that there is a market that will take their produce. On the other hand, there is need for agricultural finance. And so those don't have to be like two separate interventions along the value chain. They can be together. Let me just give you a couple of examples. One, before coming to work in Paradise here in East Africa, I was for 5 years in Afghanistan. Okay, setting up an agricultural development fund. We designed products, financial products for each different crop, and in a way in which they would, if it was a loan for maize, they would pay 5 or 6 months later. If it was for potatoes, it was 9 months because of the storage. And no monthly pay installments. It was just at the end of the harvest. We had for dairy, for poultry, and I can tell you at the end of the 5 years, we had lent $106 million with a portfolio a risk of 3%. 3% in the country that doesn't recognize contracts. You sign a contract, but there's no way to enforce it. All right? And it was just because of the organizational and institutional arrangements that we managed to put in place. The 3% par came from cooperatives. That was bad business for the Agricultural Development Fund. Lending directly to cooperatives as institutions that would own lend to their members, that did not work. But 3% portfolio risk in the most unstable country in the world, I think that's an achievement. If we could do that there, imagine what could happen in Uganda. And talking about this, also for agriculture, for agro-processing, there were loans starting at 100,000 to 500,000 for agro-processors, because we needed to make sure that there was effective demand to absorb those crops. And that happened. That was very successful, and it actually pulled the agricultural sector in some areas. And you could see dairy processing plants with Tetra Pak. You could see people exporting frozen chicken meat from Afghanistan when they were buying frozen chicken from Brazil before. So it is possible. It's just a matter of, as you rightly put it, take care of the market first and then enable farmers and agro-processors through financial services to actually supply that market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Prime Minister. He received an award for that. I want to believe we have some good friendship with the American government. We can write to them and they lend him to us for some time at their expense. That's the next letter I'll be drafting, but sure, we need these ideas. If you can get 3% in Afghanistan, I'm sure it can be 0% in Uganda. We are much better than that. We enforce some contracts. Adam Muguma, I want to give you some 2 minutes.
I think the most important thing, I think, that is coming through is where we started from. The best way to go is integrated approach. There is no single project that will help Uganda. It is a question of seeing how all the projects can be integrated together using public-private partnership and then driving Uganda's economy. The most important thing I think we haven't paid attention to is what Indy talked about. What is our strategy for financial sector development? I agree. If you look at all the indicators in financial sector development, in the case of Uganda, they all have remained red from 1986. Talk about private sector credit as a ratio of GDP. All the indicators we use in jargons of economics, in terms of financial sector development, they have all remained very low. The question is, do we have the strategy? I think really that's one of the things that remains on the table. How can we have a strategy for financial sector development that includes long-term lending and financing, savings? We're talking about financing agriculture, talking about capital market development. By the way, that also makes it cheaper for the government to borrow. I think that is really where I think we need really to work on. But other aspects, what we have been talking about in terms of making sure that, yes, you borrow the money, make sure that you generate income, but also generate exports. I think really that is, what we have been talking about. Basically, I think that's what I take from this discussion.
Thank you very much. Patrick Ayota, I know I can't afford to employ you, but I'm going to talk to the Minister of Finance. We need people to work on the financial sector development strategy, and the Minister of Finance might get you through one way or another. Your brains will be handy here. Honorable Minister, I think one of the messages coming through integrated approach. I want to believe we made some mistakes disaggregating and disintegrating strategic planning. We may want to get back where the Minister of Finance is actually the Minister of Planning, looking at an integrated approach. It's a discussion we can have. Celestino, you have anything to say? Somebody wanted the power down there. I know you don't supply at that low level. Because for them, they will look at it and say, why can't he bring power? But for you, like you're only one, I needed at least 1,000 of you, I can bring it. But you can say anything. These are your closing remarks in 1 minute.
Yeah, just close off really. What she presented really resonates with what keeps us awake. The world is being driven by the internet, There are more mobile phones in the country than the electric connections we have. Yet they need to be powered. Electricity remains the fuel to drive agriculture, to drive industrialization. So really, the three things I talked about remain fundamental, and I reaffirm what the keynote speaker said, that the country's commitment to power and transport as enablers is fundamental. Issues of affordability, issue of access, how do we reach the 6 million households that are off-grid, and issues of deploying electricity for economic value creation remain fundamental, and I take that seriously, and as part of the engagements with the government, we have to push forward these buttons.
By the way, some of us are planning to put power on the grid because we want to use solar panels to roof our houses, and then we'll sell you the power. Geoffrey, you have a minute.
Thank you, Fred. Just two quick ones. On roads and bridges and so on. As far as this subsector we come from, financial services, government should go ahead, full throttle, do roads, rail, whatever, all this infrastructure must go on. The reason is this. The question of saying who will walk on the road, who will drive on the road does not arise. When we are pricing Uganda, we look at how many kilometers of paved roads, railway roads, and so on and so forth. We look at those. Then we give it a plus or stable. Right now we are B, right? We are B plus. That plus comes from how many kilometers of roads you have. If you didn't have those kilometers, it could be a B negative. So in pricing, we must be very careful. The notion of who will move on a road, who will consume electricity, that doesn't arise. Those are pluses on when we are pricing the risk in a country. In any case, I'm sure my brother there will bear with me. In electricity, there's no surplus. If you could connect everybody who wants to be connected, you would have no surplus, so-called surplus. Again, if you introduced, and this is what we want, if you could introduce a 24-hour economy, you would have a serious deficit. And we think we can do a 24-hour economy over the next 10 years. We can do it, we can introduce it. But again, it requires a sitting down together and strategizing. Integrated planning, that is obvious. Now, financial sector development, my last.
Yes.
Financial sector deepening, financial sector development. The timing is perfect. And in the post-summit arrangements, which I trust NTV will continue and PwC will work with us to structure and design. I'm sure we shall come up with the propositions together with Dr. Mugume, who is very, very much interested in financial sector deepening, financial sector development, and as an integrated approach would come up with strategies which can take us to this middle income economy status which we must leave for our children. We have no alternative because we can do it actually. We can do it over a timeline which we ourselves give out. We will do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joanne, Geoffrey, Celestino, and Adam. We want to build roads, we want to be very strategic. Whatever we want to do, we must be very strategic in how we do it. I want to request you to join me in thanking the panel for what I want to believe was a good discussion. I want to thank NTV for the opportunity to moderate this. And I want to thank you for being a very good audience tonight. Those of you who are here and those of you who are out there, Maurice, can we go to CNN? Or even better, I think. I think you do it better. Thank you very much.
A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our panel. Please take your seats. Feel free to take your seats. There is coffee, gentlemen. I know it's been cold up here. There's some coffee and tea, and you will need some water. Sadly, we didn't help on that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the tail end, and I get excited when it's an opportunity for me to invite the finance minister. He's a very interesting man. He rarely touches his speech unless he must, or if he's reading someone else's speech, which includes the president. I must say, and we are going to work on the sound, I think, coming from down. The things Eli was talking about, tomorrow, I think Friday, we have one of the biggest fashion shows here at the Serena. And it attracts the creme de la creme of the city. And it's an industry that creates an opportunity for a lot of our young people. And I agree with Eli. We need to look at the young people that are making up the hugest percentage of the population. So as I was inviting the finance minister, I want to request all of you to really applaud the finance minister, of course, and the prime minister, his boss, for making it here after a very long day at the presidential roundtable, the initiative, which the prime minister was co-chairing with the president until 7 p.m. this evening. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. So now it's my honor to then, after his remarks, invite the Prime Minister, Honorable Minister.
The Honorable Prime Minister, ndugu Rakana, the organizers of this forum, ladies and gentlemen, it's true, me and the Prime Minister have been sitting in the State House since 9 o'clock until I think about 7, Mr. Prime Minister, and we've been talking the whole day. And now we are here. But let me begin by really thanking the organizers of this forum. I think as your Minister for Finance, I've been energized, particularly as the man responsible for the management and development of this economy. I can see people are relevant to our real problems, who we are in practicing these economic issues. So I want to applaud you and join me by clapping hands for the team that has organized this. Having said that, I want to re-echo what Mr. Onegaber has said. Roads must be there. Please, roads must be there. I presume I can see some of you are business people. Without roads, what sort of business, what sort of economy are you going to run? And you know, private sector. But even government, you need easy and quick means of transport in and around the country. And one of the ways is to have very good roads. So roads we must have. I know somebody was talking about a road going down to Isingiro, and people are raising cattle on those roads. Don't worry, because one day we shall go to pick those goats for a market. You need a good road. Power, electricity. What sort of economy can you develop without power? Good enough for, I'm also, I can count myself among the old people. I think I'm an old man. Of the oldest here. I grew up in my father's small house, and I was using a tadoba to do my reading. Then I could end up with sneezing, and the eyes are red. Now, first of all, it affects my life, but also it makes you very inefficient as a student when you're reading and a tadoba. We need electricity. We are moving now. The task I have is to industrialize this country. And there is no way you cannot industrialize the country without power. So power we shall continue to produce. Our challenge now is how to transmit and distribute it. And let me now make you hopeful. Economic development in Uganda to our middle income and eventually to our modern economy by 2040 is unstoppable. That's what I can tell you, that it is unstoppable. We have to move forward, and we are the economy. This economy is going to roar and roar and roar as we move forward. I'm telling you, everybody is keen to come and invest in this country, including Ugandans. I happen to be privileged to be meeting various individuals of Uganda who are doing business. Everybody wants to invest in this country. So, feel comforted. Honorable Karuhanga, feel comforted that this economy is going to grow. Dr. Zaramba, I agree with you. We should control our population, but not by force. Because some people have been saying, So I agree with you, we should educate people, produce the children that you can look after properly. That's all. That has always been my message on this question of population. But we also need a population to some extent. The numbers, they are very necessary. But it must be quality population. I said this somewhere in Colorado one time, and some people said, you see, Kashaija is like a Naduli. He's telling Ugandans to produce as many children. I did not say produce as many children. I said produce children that you can effectively look after and bring up. And the numbers are required. You've been talking about demand, suppressed demand. How do we stimulate demand? You can stimulate demand in two ways. One, by creating the demand locally. And you can only generate demand, so stimulate demand locally by giving people money, by putting disposable income in their pockets or in their hands. Then people will demand for goods. I know there is a suppressed demand now. I know, I'm aware. There is also shortage of liquidity in the economy. I know. I'm glad, I think Honorable Eric Karuhanga has mentioned it. And I'm now putting this challenge to you, Ugandans. You know the biggest spender is government. And don't you know that? The biggest spender in any economy is government. Am I right? Yes. Am I correct? Yes. I'm spending 7 trillion shillings on infrastructure in Uganda today. 7 trillion. Roads, and on basically 2 items, roads and power. Here is the point, and I want you to listen to this point very carefully. Of the people who are constructing this infrastructure, how many are Ugandans? Hardly any. So what happens when I pay? Have you heard of a term called multiplier effect of money? I'm sure you have heard it, all of you. Haven't you heard that? Or if you have not heard, let me tell you. This is how it works. When I get money, if I get 100,000 shillings and I buy something from him, he will also buy maybe 70,000 shillings. You will keep 30,000, then pay him either to do whatever. He will spend also like that. By the time 1 month ago, that money has gone around And the velocity, we call it the velocity of money. Once that money is moving like this, many times things are improving. And that means either now there is more production, because when I give him money, he uses it to produce. When I give him money, he employs a houseboy. A houseboy, there are things which he does. That one, then you pay your bills for water and electricity, and the economy begins to grow. To demonstrate it very simply. Now, if you are spending 7 trillion, and much of that trillion, 7 trillion, is not being retained in the country, what do you expect? The challenge is now, and I have tried to look for engineers of Ugandans, please. I'm looking for some engineers who can be able to form companies. I've been trying to help my national housing construction company. They are confused there. They are fighting over things. I don't know management. I have a problem down there, but that's beside the point. Ugandan companies that can at least, do you know that now there is no, there are about 2 Ugandan companies now whom you can give a 50-kilometer road and they tarmac it. There are only 2. Do you know how many roads I'm tarmacking? Do you know? Do you know how many roads now I'm tarmacking right now? Brand new ones. You don't know? Let me tell you. 32. 32 brand new roads I'm tarmacking now. 32. But the bulk of those people who are constructing the roads, we're not hating them. Please, let not somebody interpret that I'm talking about foreigners. But also, we must also say charity begins where? At home. So we have a problem. And soon we are embarking on another 8 roads. You have had the oil roads. So in another 6 months, we shall be working on about 40 to 45 new roads in Uganda. More money. So Ugandans, please, you people who are business people, can you help me to form companies that can come and do some of these jobs? And then some of the money can remain here. Creating jobs. That's my last point before I yes, creating jobs. Who can do it? You know, that's my passionate task, to create enough jobs for the youth, which Dr. Zaramba was talking about indirectly. If we are not careful, even now at this level, let me tell you, every year we are frauding 500,000 youth. Every year. We have to plan very seriously and work seriously to make sure those youth have got something to occupy them. If we don't do that, it could turn ugly. I hope you understand what I mean. Those youth will become a problem to us. So that's why I pray to my colleagues in the political class, let us reduce noise. I have said this before. When money does not entertain noise, whenever there is noise, the money disappears. And when it disappears, no jobs. No jobs, problems. I hope you have understood me very well. I don't have to go beyond there. So we must make sure, please, journalists, help us. Don't create sensational stories that we make Uganda as if we are on Uganda, we are about to break up. Uganda, we are on fire. No, please, journalists, this is your country. We need it peaceful. We can talk and abuse each other, but let us not demonstrate anywhere. And you know, the world is very ignorant. If you don't know, the world is very ignorant. Can I tell you a simple story before I conclude, so not to make it a little bit long? I was in London one day, and I was sitting next to a lady, an elderly lady, in a train, and we opened a conversation. How are you? Where are you from? He said, I'm from Uganda. I said, oh, you are from Uganda? I said, yes, Mama. I have a friend of mine in Johannesburg, and she even quote the street. I have a friend of mine in Johannesburg. Could you know her? You know, I can also be cheeky. I said, Mama, I have a friend of mine in Italy, just near by the Basilica there with the Pope. Might you know her? And we laughed about it. These things that are taking place in southern Sudan, those incidents we get around our neighbors, because I travel quite a lot by virtue of my assignment, people think these are now, they say that is Uganda now. When you come to, they say, hey, we had there was a problem like this. Understand there's a lot of people are killing each other and refugees are running. How is Uganda? So please, friends, I want to use this opportunity to really appeal to Ugandans. Let's keep peace. Let's keep peace. We can sit down and chat on any issue that may arise. I was ashamed what I saw taking place in Parliament. That thing of Parliament. That is not the way we should conduct ourselves. That thing in Parliament. Hardly had I moved out of that Parliament, I have a daughter in Manchester. She was already sending me a message. Daddy, is Uganda going on? Is it going on fire? We saw members of Parliament jumping up, and we don't. Is the country? Is it safe? And she was planning to come home. Daddy, should I come? You hear? And yet she's a Ugandan. Now, what about somebody who is not a Ugandan? Lastly, Robert, you have said we shouldn't bring anybody in UDB external. Yes, that is true, but you know, Robert. You know, if in my tradition, if we don't have fire, you go to the neighbor to that your wife can cook food. So we may not have to. Maybe you could say they shouldn't take a big part of it. We should still remain in charge. Anyway, that will be talk of another day. But I agree with you. But we could get Ugandans, and I have not discussed it. I don't want to say something before my Prime Minister, which I have not discussed with cabinet. But we've been thinking in my ministry, one way to recapitalize UDB is maybe to get in some Ugandans who have got money and come and invest, like NSSF. NSSF has got money in the Housing Finance Bank, so why not? And any one of you who has got money. Maybe later on we might think of taking to the exchange, so that maybe people can buy shares and we increase money that we can use to industrialize this country. Honorable, sorry, Mumuza, Doctor, there is a statement you made which I want to correct before I call the Prime Minister. Revenue is going down. No. Revenue is not going down. Revenue collection not going down. This year we hope to collect 14 point something trillion. Next financial year we are projecting it to come to about 15 point something. It's not growing fast enough. The essence that it's not going down, the essence that it's not growing enough. I want it to grow bigger. I wish I could go to 18, I wish I could go to 20 trillion. So that I reduce that gap of borrowing. I've been accused today that when I go to the market, which I know very well, when I go to the market, I compete with the private sector. That's why interest rates at times are kept high. So I thought I should make that correction. Mr. Prime Minister, sir, with these few remarks, should I do that? Should I call the Prime Minister? Am I supposed to call the Prime Minister? Okay. With these remarks, sir, it's my pleasure to invite you to come and address this distinguished gathering.
Contributed convening of this economic summit, discussing related issues at the Presidential Investors Round Table at State House. And indeed, we are discussing issues to do with job creation, government is true, that the engagement, we are looking forward actually to the outcome and the recommendations that will emerge out of this very, very serious discussion, because the bit of time that we have been here, it has been obvious that very many good ideas are emerging. And I'm sure the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning will pay special attention to many of these ideas, and some of them may find themselves under consideration by Cabinet because of their relevance and importance. I'll just make a few remarks, mainly about some of the issues that I have seen or I have heard coming out of this discussion. It is true that I do subscribe to the view that the policy to upgrade, to pave the roads was one of the most important policies, and is one of the most important policies that the NRM government has implemented and actualized, and we are very, very proud of it. They are not here just for a show. As you all know, we are talking of regional trade. How is this regional trade coming about? I have no doubts. I have not done the studies, but I have no doubts that one of the great facilitators of regional trade is the improved communication between Uganda and her neighbors. It therefore becomes easier for you and me to export what we may want to export to our neighbors, and indeed our neighbors find it easy because of the good road infrastructure available to bring in their own commodities. So I think there has been, I think this achievement of improved infrastructure should be, in my view, commended. And by the way, we are just at the beginning of it. We are going to see better and more results from this improved regional infrastructure emanating from Uganda. It was interesting. I do remember that it was literally impossible to get to South Sudan because of poor roads. You would find so many trucks stuck on the road. But now, you can get South Sudan just like that. So that is on question of infrastructure. And I was also intrigued to hear that there is somebody in Rugaga exporting matoke, UK or somewhere. I think if this road gets to him, he will not only be able to export to London, but even Kampala may begin to access his matoke and many other areas. Now, the other point just I want to mention is what Ndukabushenga raised. He raised rather fairly controversial issues on the question of mobilization of money. Yes, we should mobilize money first from Uganda, without any doubt. However, we should keep our options open if we are able to get affordable money from elsewhere that can supplement and fit in our own well-determined policies. Why not use that money to also inject it in our economy if it is relatively affordable money? So I will not close, I will not stop Ndugumatia Kasaija from negotiating with people who can supply money at affordable rates. The point of roads, I thought, was so well illustrated by Resida's question. Resida said Kisoro is 23 from the mountain gorillas. The fact that now we have a very good road to Kisoro and it requires only Ndugumatia Kasaija to raise money for 23 kilometers in order to access the gorillas, I think is a great achievement in my view. And in fact, this is going to be the closest access that we are getting to the gorillas, because wind, as you know, is still quite a bit of a distance. Therefore, the strategy to do these roads, we are already getting multiplier effect, where we just need now to invest 23, money for 23 kilometers, and we are with the gorillas. So, friends, I think the question of roads has been made. We support the view of Ndugu Onegobel on this question of infrastructure. And this is the very reason we are investing in standard gauge railway, because when it is complete, within about 12 hours, we will have our merchandise to Mombasa and here. And Uganda will become more and more competitive, because, as you very well know, Uganda has had quite challenges to be able to carry our cargo to and from Mombasa. Now empowered by the standard gauge railway, Uganda will be more competitive, and our cargo to and from the coast will come much more easily, and therefore, again, it emphasizes the importance of infrastructure, especially roads, railway, and, by the way, power. Power, and Ndugumatia has made reference to it. Uganda, and again, I think Honorable Bell made this point, Uganda's economy should be able to run 24 hours. And if we do, as we should, power will be obviously a problem. So I think there should be more meaningful investment in power, so that at no time in the future should power be a major roadblock. As all of us know, power has been a major roadblock that has been chasing away jobs, because it has been chasing away investors. Therefore, let's invest in power. There is every reason why we should. Now, I think it's right that we should emphasize agriculture. Agriculture has been, remains, and for many years to come will remain the mainstay of our economy. Apart from feeding us, agro-based industries, we must embark on them. However, to be able to do so, we need more modernized agriculture. Agriculture which will not be scared because there is a drought. Agriculture which will not be scared because the soil is tired. We should be able to have modern agriculture, which Kabushenga is doing, irrigation. And by the way, one of the solutions to our agricultural challenges is having more Kabushengas, more Matia Kasaijas in agriculture, and I'm glad they are there in agriculture, and setting a very good example for others to follow. They are there not as peasants or peasant producers, but they are there as commercial producers. And commercial production, again, this matter has been referred to a number of times, has enormous potential. We are just at the launch pad of commercial agriculture, and with now solar being available to promote solar irrigation, we should be able to take these advantages so that Uganda, which is already endowed by the Almighty God as essentially an agricultural country, can now be supplemented by modern agriculture with modern irrigation powered by solar, which is relatively cheap energy in terms of irrigation. So, friends, Ndugu Karuhanga made a very, very serious point about local content. In fact, it's shameful that Uganda, which used to do tarmac roads even during the colonial times, where Muhumuza was, no, I don't think you experienced it. Anyway, I can tell Dr. Muhumuza that even during the colonial times, there were some limited tarmac roads. So, Uganda has no choice. Uganda must make her roads. Uganda must develop capacity to make roads so that we can reduce the hemorrhage of resources to Beijing, to Turkey, whatever country you can think of, that making roads really is an elementary responsibility. If we do not have the engineers, we must hire them for a limited duration to train our own engineers. So, Ndugumatia, you and I and this government have really an obligation to, as quickly as possible, redeem ourselves from the hemorrhage of resources that has been demonstrated, especially in the road construction. And indeed, that's one of the reasons why we have economic challenges. If it was Mukalazi construction, Mukalazi is not the best name. It was Mukasa construction company doing these roads. The money would most probably be in Masaka or in Mukono, instead of even our money for roads going to be kept with interest, of course, in China or in any other country. But anyway, this is a matter where we agree with Ndugu Eri Karuhanga that we must develop capacity to construct the essential things, be it roads, be it railway, be it houses, because these are elementary, these are really basic engineering skills that any country should have. After all, if you look at the railroad which was built more than 100 years ago. So, friends, it's a challenge. And Ndugumati and I, and all of us should follow it up. As I conclude, I agree with Ndugu Matiagasai and indeed Ndugu Zaramba in saying that family planning is perfectly okay, and it's true that government encourages family planning. And family planning here is that the individual or the couple should be empowered to have children by choice and not children by chance. At the moment, there are many people in Uganda who would want to have 3 or 4 children, but they have no capacity to enforce this, so they are there exposed to the natural phenomena, and they end up with any number because they do not have, they are not empowered to determine the number of children. So family planning should definitely be supported where it is children by choice and not by chance, and indeed it is dependent on the number of children that you can meaningfully have. So, in a nutshell, friends, I'm very happy that my brother Matea Kasaija and I, although we came late, we have been able to join you. The discussion has been extremely useful, and the ideas have been very authentic, and we very much appreciated them, and we will follow up some of the ideas that have been generated in this very, very good discussion. But it's only fair that perhaps as I conclude, I should mention the issue of counterfeit, because I believe that this is a big danger and a threat to the development of the economy. We need to build quick capacity as Uganda and as East Africa to be able to quickly screen counterfeit out in order to ensure that there is more meaningful development of our own economy without being interfered with by useless things that are going to be a problem instead of helping us. Therefore, we need to sharpen our capacity, our laboratories, so that we protect ourselves and we protect the industries that we are planning to have, which are being interfered with by counterfeit goods. I want to thank the organizers who have done great work, and the people who have been listening to this very important discussion, and I'm glad that Uganda is developing this culture of discussion, exchange of views, and not just sporadically. Since this second one, I expect a third one, a fourth one, and so on, so that the country can continue to benefit from these great ideas. I thank you.
Thank you very much, the Right Honourable Prime Minister. I will very shortly invite the Managing Director to make a vote of thanks, but I wanted to specifically, Right Honourable Prime Minister, recognize two very special people, and one, of course, is seated next to you as my other boss, His Excellency Amin Marji, the country representative of the Aga Khan Development Network, who's sat with us throughout this evening. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you so much. The other is His Excellency Haj Jallo. He's the country representative, Food and Agriculture Organization. And he's been here through the evening. He's very important in matters of agriculture and supports the Uganda government on developing our agriculture sector. Your Excellency, Right Honourable Prime Minister, allow me just thank the content team. There's been a team that has been behind this summit, of course headed by the MD, Johnson Omolo. I want to thank Geoffrey Onegio-Bell, Fred Muhumuza, Swaibu Mboa from the Economic Policy Research Center, our business editor Sam Setumba, John Biaruhanga, from a commissioner from the Ministry of Finance, and our very own Jackie Batanda from USAID. I really want to thank and request you for a round of applause for this team. And Jackie, to you, of course, indirectly, I'm also thanking Mark Masak, the country mission director. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I also want to in a very special way, recognize, of course, PwC, our partners in this, but also the Ministry of Finance, Stanbic Bank, USAID, Umeme, Top Finance Bank, Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited, Standard Chartered Bank, Uganda Manufacturers Association, Vivo Energy, and the China Construction and Communication Company. Ladies and gentlemen, it would not have been possible for us to be here this evening unless it was for that group of people. So I want to now request the MD, Johnson Omolo, to quickly come and make a vote of thanks, and I will invite you to a very wonderful session of networking for those of you who can stay with us.
Right Honorable Prime Minister and the leader of government business, we are grateful to have you here. Today, we have again proven once again that despite your advanced age, you are still very strong, and we should not exclude people based on their age. We thank you for coming, and your presence clearly signifies how important this event is. As Uganda's leading broadcaster, we shall continue to organize such forums where there can be a candid discussion about the future of our country, especially in terms of national development and where the economy is concerned. To the Minister of Finance, we thank you for sparing time and for co-sponsoring this event. You can clearly see that there is a shift in mindset. If the ministry can agree to partner with private companies like NTV to organize such an event, it's a signal of a shift in mindset from where we used to be. To all those who have managed to honor our invitation, we are grateful to you. We shall continue engaging. I thank you all for coming. May God bless you. May God bless Uganda. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, and the Right Honorable Prime Minister, you are addressing the nation, and you had over 8 million people watching. Right Honorable Prime Minister. However, there is another group of people, and I must mention, through our social media platform and the hashtag that was developed, NTV Summit 17. An hour ago, we had 68 million impressions. So we reached 68 million people across the world. And so this is the kind of digital edge we are talking about. And I guess that number should hit 100 by the end of this week. We will work on that. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to invite you to a wonderful session of networking. At the end, somewhere in the corridor where we were for our cocktail, I am inviting the Right Honorable Prime Minister to join us for a couple of minutes. Please do not leave us alone in this building, because we may not leave. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good night.